Do we want to hear Jon Emmett first, Julia? I don't think we want to hear Jon Emmett first, do we?
No.
I think we want to start with our guest today who's standing patiently by in Davis Island Yacht Club, Chip Merlin, near Davis Island Yacht Club. But let's go back to our original, the plan for today's show, which is to start with our normal intro, Julia. Don't you think we should start with our normal intro?
Yes, indeed.
I do too. So let's get to that and play that first slide and not Jon Emmett. And here we go. We are live from Studio B here at the Beach Street Yacht Club on a beautiful day, a beautiful Friday in San Francisco. I'm your host, Tom Eamon, along with my regular co-host, landlady, Commodore of the Beach Street Yacht Club, Julia Vedekind. I trust you are well, Commodore.
I am, believe it or not.
And you're also a member of St. Francis, and our guest today, standing by in Tampa, is also a member of a number of yacht clubs, including St. Francis Yacht Club. We'll get
good taste he has.
He does have good taste. We'll get to Chip Merlin in a second. We got quite a show, so buckle up as we go into this show number 840. In our 10th year. Happy Friday. Happy National Day of what, Julia? What great sailing nation? And not that they much celebrate, I learned, putting the show together last night. They don't much celebrate their National Day. We have a correction from Tuesday. I called Thomas Whidden Tom and Betsy's son. That's not true. That was fake news. We have our guest, William Chip Merlin, super lawyer, super sailor, owner of Merlin. He's got some great ideas on how to improve our beloved sport, especially after last weekend's experience in the SoCal 300. Coaching Corner, you saw a little preview of Jon Emmett there at the top of the show. More important than ever, he says, to work together. Some good thoughts from Jon coming up in his segment in the B block. World Sailing, I got some bad news, and maybe not some bad smell emanating from the World Sailing HQ in London. We'll break that news.
Oh, no.
In the C Block special, This Day in History, a bit of a preview of an upcoming major sailing event that is happening in maybe 2032, Julia. We finally have Alistair Murray back on the show, inspired by Tuesday's show, he says, with Charlie Enright, the new CEO of U.S. Sailing, and he has some thoughts that he's going to share with us. SailGP, we got a preview, of course, of the big event, the really big shoe, the big show in New York this weekend, the Mubadala New York City SailGP. We've got the Russell Report. We got Tom Slingers, Tom Slingers is about to become, Julia, I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
An underwear model. He's going to be in his skivvies or so on. Look at Chip. Chip's going to go represent him and do the contract. 52 Super Series is wrapping up tomorrow, and American Magic Quantum Racing is on top with Harry H4 Melgus at the wheel. First time he sailed, and the team is doing very well. Is he a future AC guy? And, of course, we think he is. Last leg, another great video from the NACR 49er and FX Europeans in Greece, and more, including Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Julia, what are we celebrating today? There's your first clue.
Flags.
Flags. What national day, what sailing country? You must know that flag, Julia. We feature that country a lot on here.
I know.
It is Statehood Day in Sweden, and they're much more interested in Midsummer's Day, than they are in their own national holiday, and we're going to show you the difference. As a Norwegian, I can talk a little bit about this.
I've actually been in Finland for Midsummer's Night.
You have?
Yes.
Well, it's great. It's a great time in the Scandinavia, right?
Yes, wonderful.
Sweden's National Day is celebrated annually on June 6th. That commemorates the election of Gustav Vasa as the king in 1523, which marked the beginning of Sweden's independence from the Kalmar Union. It also celebrates the adoption of a new constitution in 1809. They like June 6th. They kind of coordinated things. But let's talk about the difference between their statehood day in Sweden and our statehood day in Norway. Here's a quick video.
Not really, no.
Not very much, no.
Traditionally not, but we have a red day, which means we have a day off.
No.
No, I care about midsummer.
That was King Harold on the balcony, the Sailing King, our good friend.
Yes.
In Norway. But Sweden, not so much.
Don't have any, no.
Not really.
No, didn't
Watch
even
Game of
think
Thrones.
about it. Yeah, probably.
Hope for a sunny day, just chill with friends, maybe have a beer or two.
My birthday is the day before, so I'm probably gonna be hangover. Yeah, I'm gonna work.
No, but I have midsummer.
Back in Norway. Okay, nice video. And as I said, as a Norwegian or half or part Norwegian,
Yes, I
my
do.
mother's dad,
As a matter of
she
fact.
says, yeah, I do. As a matter of fact, care about it. As those of you who watch regularly will know, my mother's father, Cedric Fredrickson, was from Oslo and that side of the family. So I got a bit of Norwegian blood. And I remember one of the first things in life, he had me on his knee, bouncing me, Norwegian grandfather Cedric Fredrickson, saying 10,000 Swedes ran through the weeds, chased by one Norwegian. A lot of rivalry back and forth between those two countries. So I thought it was fun to play that little video. What else are we celebrating today, Julie? We're celebrating all the FOSI.
Absolutely.
The Friends of Sailing Illustrated, FOSI, who have supported us through thick and thin, not so much through thin, but consistently in the 10 years we've been doing this via patreon.com/join/Sailing Illustrated. And thank you very much indeed for your continuing support. This is viewer-supported media. We don't have many advertisers. We have every now and then an in-kind gift from somebody like Clayton Embley. You want some of your bourbon cream? It's Friday.
I know. In a minute.
In a minute. So you're intimidated by Chip. You don't want to get Chip, Chip on your beds. We'll get to Chip in a sec. But I have a correction to make from Tuesday's show. Remember we showed you this picture from Oakcliff, that superb winning team that it was held by young Jack Park, by his dad was trimming, and Barry Parkin, and his Jack Parkin, who was calling tactics, who we know from the Governor Cup, but it was his brother Freddie Parkin was on the helm, and they were superb by all accounts. The grade 3 at Oakcliff that last weekend was a qualifier for the WMRT Triple Crown, the Oakcliff International, the Sewanee Corinthian Thompson Cup, and the Chicago Match Race Series. Keep your eye on Freddie Parkin, who swept the event. His brother Jack, who we know was tactician, and his father Barry, who I did not know. I umpired his matches at the 96 Olympics in Savannah because he was sailing on the British Soling, and they finished fourth. And because the other senior member of that umpire panel jury was a Brit, he did the American matches, and I did the British matches because you didn't want the same nationality.
No.
You know, not that we cared or would have done anything differently.
No.
The errata, the mistake, the fake news was that the kid on the right in this shot is Thomas Whidden, but he is not the son of Betsy and Tom Whidden. Tom, of course, famously of the America's Cup and North Sails and much more, longtime dear friends. He is their grandson. He is their son Avery's son, Thomas Whidden. So I talked to Betsy. First time I've talked with Betsy in a long time. She and I and a couple other ladies, I was riding out on the Yacht Betsy with Dennis Connor's team in 95. And we'd go out from our base and go out into the Pacific outside Point Loma. And we would do the New York Times crossword puzzle collectively, the three of us.
Yes.
And as you know, it gets more difficult through the week.
Yes.
Wednesday is tough. Thursday's really tough. Friday's impossible. Saturday is strange. If we could get that puzzle done between the three or four of us on the tender that were paying attention to crossword puzzles on the way out to the race course, we inevitably won the race.
Oh, good. So you had to hurry.
And Betsy reminded me of all that, and we had a nice long chat, and I apologize for calling Thomas their son. It's his grandson. Nice to catch up, nonetheless. Okay, as we've promoted now, we've got our longtime friend I've known for the better part of 50 years joining us live from Tampa, Florida. Chip, welcome to the show.
Tom, it's great to be here with you this afternoon.
What's that little volcano in the background, and what's that little boat in the background?
Well, that's as you're coming around Diamond Head, and the boat is Merlin.
Of course.
As it's coming around there, it's what everybody wants to see after going from Los Angeles to Hawaii, is getting around and seeing that. In the daytime is a little easier, and but it is a blessed sight when you get to see that Diamond
Indeed.
Head.
When did you buy Merlin?
I bought it in 2017, right after Bill Lee had finished racing out in the Transpac. He put it up for sale. Want a quick story on it?
Well, we'll get to that in a second. But you bought it in 17. You spoke here at St. Francis, you think, in 2019?
In 2019.
You did a yachtsman's yachting. We don't call it yachtsman's anymore. This is a progressive town, Julie. We have to call it yachting luncheon.
Yes.
And Bill gave a great talk, and then we realized that we knew each other from our Flying Scott days. We both used to race. In fact, Bill still does. Chip races flying what some people call flying sidewalks, some people call flying squatinis, and worse. Mm-hmm. But this class goes from strength to strength. It was introduced in 1958, designed by a Scotsman named Sandy Douglas, long gone, who also designed the Thistle and the Highlander and International 14s. It looks like a big, heavy International 14. And he was a great sailor. The 19-foot Flying Scott, which my grandfather had, Flying Scott number 178, Chip. Wow. And now they are up to 6,200. They still are building, give or take, 100 a year. It's a great class. And proudly, you and I met sailing at the St. Andrews Bay Yacht Club in what year? Do you have any idea?
I think it would have been 50 years ago this year. Wow. And I think it was at the Flying Scott Midwinters when I met you 50 years ago.
Wow.
In March.
How come you look like you're really young and this one is getting older?
You see what I have to put up with, Chip?
Tom was a great sailor. Tom was a champion in Flying Scott.
Well, that and 385 doesn't buy you a Starbucks these days. But let's talk for a minute about some of these clubs, because these are great clubs, particularly St. Andrews Bay Yacht Club on the Gulf Coast, a stalwart member of the Gulf Yachting Association, really right in the middle of the GYA, which stretches on the coast from New Orleans all the way down to, last I knew, are the clubs in Tampa, St. Pete, they still members of the GYA?
It still goes all the way down to St. Petersburg Yacht Club, but most of the participation goes from New Orleans to the St. Andrews Yacht Club. And they're busy racing right now because they race every summer. And they have a lot of inter-club races, typically every other week, that are going on that leads up to their championship series over Labor Day with a Sir Thomas Lipton Cup that they all race against.
The Lipton Cup in the GYA, we talked about that on the show. I mean, Lipton put something like a dozen Lipton Cups around this country,
there
right?
were 16 of them, There
were a bunch of them.
I saw one of them at the Santa Barbara Yacht Club.
There's one at Santa Barbara Yacht Club. Of course, there's the one at San Diego Yacht Club. There's one, believe it or not, in Colorado at one of the clubs up in the reservoirs, up in the hills east of the Rockies. But this club is a great club. And here's a quick video to tell you, we like to feature yacht clubs. We think they're the heart and the soul, as you know, of the sport. And I'm going to do a quick video here on the St. Andrews Bay Yacht Club.
And sales were up today at the St. Andrews Bay Yacht Club as they played host to the 100th anniversary of the opening GYA regatta. The Gulf Yachting Association's Captiville season began yesterday and continued on into today as sailors from as far as New Orleans took their vessels out into the St. Andrews Bay for the opening regatta. A team from the Southern Yacht Club in New Orleans came out victorious among the Captiville group after earning the top score after the weekend's 5 races. It was quite the spectacle to all the sailors that competed and all ages that competed today, and the St. Andrews Bay Yacht Club was the proud host to the races.
We're honored. We're humbled. This is a big deal for the sport of sailing in our community. It's a big deal for the sport of sailing along the Gulf Coast. You'll hear that's the horn. Everybody's back at the dock now.
The GYA will return to Panama City for the Candler Regatta that will take place the first week of June. I'll have more on the exciting weekend from St. Andrews Bay Yacht Club coming up tonight at 10.
Now, do you always get that kind of ink in the Gulf Coast? I know that the sport, our beloved sport, is popular, but that was really nice ink for a club you and I both sailed at quite a number of times.
You know, it's interesting that out of Panama City, Florida, I always found that there were journalists that were writing about it, usually not so much in television, but there was always a journalist that was writing about things, and you get that out of Pensacola and also out of New Orleans. So I think because the area is a little bit smaller than the newspapers are, they still, cover some of the sailing circuit more so then than today, but they still do.
I think you're right. It's smaller markets where that will happen, both in print and in television. But, we used to have an outdoors writer for the Washington Post who covered our sport, the America's Cup and beyond. We had writers in the New York Times, the San Francisco Chronicle, as you know, our past Commodore Kimball Livingston, who wrote for the Crown for years. Bill Center down in San Diego, even before the America's Cup was a thing in San Diego, covered the sport. We've lost that, and it's something I don't know what, Bill, what we can do about that, but I think it's something worth talking about here in our sport, maybe not today, but big picture going forward.
Part of what you do right now, though, helps promote it. Tom, I applaud you, what you do. It keeps it interesting. You do a great job, and I think others that, Scuttlebutt Magazine, Latitude 38, all those, regional type of publicity for what we do, I think really means something and incites people to, camaraderie of what we do, as well as interest others. This looks kind of fun.
Well, we need this new media, the podcasting and so on. Blogs have helped. Scuttlebutt's been around since forever, and Tom Lewick started it. Now his son Craig runs it, but that's almost more of a Wikipedia of sailing. They print a lot of, and I'm not being critical. It's great that they're doing this, but they print a lot of press releases and if I need to know something that happened in, 1990, maybe not 1995, it's probably on the Scuttlebutt, in the Scuttlebutt archives. But back to yacht clubs, because I think one of the other things that's happened, and we say on this show a lot, Chip, is that the heart and soul of the sport are these yacht clubs, and we seem to move away from the clubs as the sport becomes more professional and it starts being run by SailGP, and the America's Cup is run by a professional team now, not even a yacht club, and we were lamenting that. But one of these great yacht clubs, St. Andrews Bay Yacht Club, caught on fire in 2023, and it was a real shakeup for them. You, as a member of that club, can tell us what happened.
Well, it has its genesis after Hurricane Michael. The yacht club had suffered, damage, and its roof was blown off in parts, and it had a lot of water damage throughout. While they were, able to get up and get going, I got involved just because of what I do for a living, and there was a dispute with the insurance company. One of the things I was concerned about was whether or not all the electric would get completely replaced afterwards. And I'm projecting a little bit, but I believe that the electrical was not completely replaced, and eventually it leads to shorts that happen, and then fires that do happen, and that it's something to be concerned for everybody after you have a disaster. Long after the insurance money is paid. A lot of these buildings are older, and certainly if it's wood related like this one was, then things like this happen. The unfortunate things that for yacht clubs, especially with the building codes that have changed, that typically require yacht clubs to build higher and further up off the ground, it's extraordinarily expensive to do so. And the St. Andrews Bay Yacht Club, with respect to its main clubhouse right now, has a bit of an issue with respect to coming up with the funds to be able to rebuild. It'll never look the same. It looks more like, that's the Allen Douglas building that is more of the sailing center that's there. And you can see how it's raised up so that the floodwaters would go underneath of it, and above is where people can, participate. But eventually, back on the other side, there are plans, but it's going to take a little bit of fundraising and typically loans that everybody's got to put their name to. And this has gone on all over the Gulf Coast, and from hurricanes that have hit. So when you go to Gulfport, past Christiane, just about all the yacht clubs, they're built up higher because they've been wiped out at one time or another. Yeah, so they all look different as a result of no longer close to the ground. There's a couple exceptions, two of being the St. Petersburg Yacht Club and one being the Tampa Yacht Club. The Tampa Yacht Club's come up with a very unique way of keeping the floodwaters out that are extraordinarily expensive, but it did work. To a significant amount, it worked keeping the floodwaters out from the hurricane we had last year. It's still right on the ground, and they had to get approval by FEMA and the local building officials in order to put up this almost a barricade system that goes completely around the yacht club.
Was it like a moat? I mean, it's the opposite of a moat.
I mean, Tom, you almost can't make it up. And I thought this will never work in a million years. They had one little failure point, and then it got about 6 inches of water in there, but nothing what could have happened because both my sister and my daughter's homes were flooded out and have to be completely rebuilt. But the Tampa Yacht Club, did very well. Now, I raised the issue about, being raised up in the building codes because the St. Petersburg Yacht Club has the same issue as it wants to expand and change and keep up with the times. It has a significant amount of what I call non-breakaway type floors on the bottom floor. So the bottom floor is the problem, and the new building codes require that to be built completely different. It's not the main, space anymore. It's got to be built up, and in order to do so, they have plans in the future to rebuild the yacht club to keep it modernized. And the St. Peter's Yacht Club is an extraordinarily successful yacht club, and it's done a very great job in terms of keeping its membership younger on purpose so that it will, continue to thrive. A great yacht club, but even that's going to be challenging to rebuild it up and in a different way. So, as a result of whatever's causing it, if you're on the water, that the waters are rising without a doubt, and these new building codes are making all the yacht clubs, at least in the Gulf Coast, and I mean this is all the way up the East Coast, frankly, build up in order to comply with the new building codes that we have.
A lot of comments coming in about this and other things, and of course the hurricanes on the Gulf Coast and on the East Coast of Florida and up our East Coast, but then there seems to have been a lot of fires. Annapolis Yacht Club burned. I'm drawing a blank now on a couple others, the clubs that have burned down. And I don't know if that's because they're old and they didn't have sprinkling. Like I know St. Andrews Bay didn't have sprinkling. Is there some reason for this? Or is it just not even statistically significant?
Well, no, if you really think about it carefully, most of the yacht clubs are close to water, and they're especially close to salt water. But anytime you're in a humid environment and around electrical, the two just don't go very well together. And as they get older, the issues with respect to electrical shorting come up. And so we see a greater instance of fire. I mean, so the two big things that have destroyed yacht clubs are you get flooded out or you get, burned up. One of the two that have historically caused a lot of problems. And you have to insure for it. And that's what I do for a living. I've represented a number of yacht clubs throughout the United States after they have insurance claims and then disputes with their own insurance companies. I got very busy up after Superstorm Sandy and a number of areas, especially down along the Toms River.
Yeah, Commodore Bo Froelich is on here, our past Commodore once or twice removed here at St. Francis, and he is saying that, California Yacht Club down in Marina del Rey burned, and that's in the process of being replaced.
St. Francis had it.
And St. Francis had a fire in what, 97?
Yes, I
had a fire at Christmas time. And it burned down. That's right. And Mark Holland is on up north of Boston. He's a retired architect who worked forever for FEMA. And he was on the show, remember, a couple, 3 weeks ago.
Right.
And he's saying while he was at FEMA, he wrote hundreds of grants for repairs to coastal boat and yacht club buildings damaged by hurricanes.
Right.
And then maybe the most important comment here, there's lots of comments about Flying Scots and other things, but we've got Chris Watt saying, how is this making our sport more fun? He wants to know what we've got to say. And you particularly, Chip, got to say about making the sport more fun. Yeah, Southern burned during Katrina. We got that, Rick Bannerow, and it was 76, Bo Froelich, Commodore Froelich's reminding us approximately that St. Francis burned. But let's go back to the good news in yacht clubs. One of the coolest yacht clubs is also in your neck of the woods there in Tampa, St. Pete. And you're a member of, in fact, I see you list Davis Island Yacht Club on your yacht club entries with Merlin.
Yeah, that might be because Brian Malone, who's the boat captain, is the upcoming Commodore at the Davis Island Yacht Club.
Good.
I typically like Merlin being listed as the St. Petersburg Yacht Club. If I tried, I wouldn't be able to get through the breakwater. I mean, I couldn't get that Merlin drawing 11 feet in the Davis Island Yacht Club basin if I tried. So that's the truth. But we have, a number of sailors from Davis Island on our crew coming up, and there's definitely a friendly rivalry between Davis Island and St. Petersburg Yacht Club. Both are great sailing yacht clubs, and each have their own, separate programs. And, just like boats, I say there's different yacht clubs for different budgets as well. And I do believe what you said, Tom, is extraordinarily important. I mean, people being able to go to a yacht club that they enjoy, that they can afford. In most places, you can find that. And you can find a budget for any type of boat whatsoever, for any level of sailing you want to do. And I know that the Grand Prix boats obviously are getting all the publicity being on the water, but that's a spectator, type deal. And that might lead to people then saying, well, geez, what's this sport about? And I can guarantee you can find a boat, you can find a friend, you can go almost to any yacht club on a Wednesday or a Thursday night and sail for free with somebody.
Yep.
And that's one of the beauty, what I think is the most beautiful part of the boat is, of the sport, is that people are very, very willing to have new people come, learn the sailing, and then people get the itch. And the next thing you know, you're out there you're doing it with your family and friends. On Thursday night at Davis Island Yacht Club. I have J111 now too. And Brian Malone has his 10-year-old daughter out there skippering the boat, which is a nice thing for a kid that's going on pretty much on Optimist or a Sunfish going over behind the wheel on a J111.
It's really important.
It's very important because, one of the things that all of us can see, especially on the East Coast, up in the Northeast, there are thousands of kids. I watched 120 Optimist prams on a starting line. I was like, where do all these kids go to when they become teenagers or in college or older? I mean, but they're going somewhere. And I can tell they're having fun out there on the water doing it. So, getting, I think, on our sport, people to progress into other type boats, other type of pleasures that you have with it. Not everybody enjoys racing. Great. There's cruising, knock yourself out. And the yacht clubs typically have people that do want to do different things with the boats, not necessarily always race.
Well, St. Francis, of which you're also a member, we're proud to have you here as part of you're coming for the Big Boat Series again this year?
We have so much fun at the Big Boat Series. I mean, Merlin is not made to go around buoys in one bay. It is made to do one thing, to go from Los Angeles to Hawaii as fast as possible. That's what Bill Lee made the race, the boat for. But we have so much fun going to that regatta. And some of the other big boats, how do you do that, Chip? And I go, it's a blast. And San Francisco's fantastic. And the membership at the St. Francis Yacht Club has just been amazing for us. And I've enjoyed it so much. And with some encouragement and good luck, they accepted me as a member. And I'm really happy about that. I think St. Francis stands for a proposition of promoting sailing at all various levels and the enjoyment of the sport. And I've loved it so much. I certainly want everybody else to appreciate it the same.
Well, as I said in the pre-check and the tech check before the show, we're going to get you to join yet another yacht club. Next time you're in San Francisco, you come over here.
The Beach Street Yacht Club. And
join the Beach Street Yacht Club, of which Julia is the Commodore. And we have 150 members from around the world. It's a very difficult yacht club to get into. What happened to our, there it is,
Just a bit.
our Zoom. We're talking
Yeah.
about Beach Street Yacht Club and we get a blackout on the Zoom. Julie.
No.
Change the culture of so many of the Uber Opti parents and the kids will be a lot better. I think that's a good point, Rick Banner. We got a problem with youth sports in
Yeah.
this country, of course, and maybe beyond. Lahaina Yacht Club also burned. Ron Wrights is reminding us, so that's a good point.
But it also is an example of a very informal yacht club. And
meeting St. Francis.
no, Lahaina.
Oh, Lahaina, for sure.
And which does major races and has a grand fun membership.
Well, and that's, I think, one of the things that Chip is going to tell us about how important the social side. We talk about that a lot on this show. We'll get to that in a sec. There was one other point.
I have one other point, just because I can't stand it.
Please do.
I met Merlin when it was being built.
In that you're a bit of a media star, Chip. I've seen you on, in fact, one day here, not too long ago, I texted you and said, hey, I just saw you on, I can't remember, CNN or Fox News or something, talking about, legal implications and lawsuits and insurance. So you seem to be quite an expert. In fact, some people call you the master of disaster. I see that. That's the reference inside of some of these online, both in terms of print media and in the television. But I've seen you in television on Fox, CNN, NBC, ABC, the Tampa Bay Times, which is your local newspaper there, big paper, CBS, and the Sun, the Baltimore Sun. I guess you were talking about the bridge coming down in Baltimore, weren't you?
Yeah, they got me on talking about the bridge and the boat and who's at fault and how the insurance was going to work. And everybody talks about big disasters, but that's what I do, first party insurance. So it's, if somebody's insurance company's not paying them on property damage, that's what I do for a living. So I've ended up, after Katrina, almost living in New Orleans and Mississippi. After Superstorm Sandy up there, I've been spending a lot of time out in Los Angeles in our Los Angeles office on the wildfires. But that's what I do for a living day to day, and helping businesses and people, yacht clubs sometimes, get through the various, issues that they have with respect to their insurance claim process that most people never think about until the disaster strikes. So, and they call me on television. Nobody reads their insurance policy. Nobody understands it until all of a sudden you have a loss. And that's what I do every day for a living.
Well, isn't that the truth? Well, you're an author. I had no idea you've written a book, Mavericks and Merlins, until I was researching last night. Sailors and Renegades Leave Shore. What about you? And I gather the book is a bit of an encouragement of how anybody can go sailing, whether it's in a Flying Scot or in a ULDB like Merlin. And you had a nice foreword by Kenny Reed. Kenny wrote, boats like Merlin don't just exist for one time, but for all time. As a young sailor, Ken Reed says, I can remember seeing and hearing about this sled that defied expectations and performance. Bill Lee's revolutionary design ushered in a new era of racing. The boat's performance throughout the following 40 years showcases the power of design and the passion that Bill Lee, crafted into the soul of the yacht Merlin. I first encountered Chip Merlin in Newport, Ken says, with some friends. He was excited as all get out about the upcoming Newport to Bermuda race, and he seemed genuinely happy about the sailing and, of course, owning and sailing the legendary Merlin. I wished him and his crew the best of luck on their race. Chip's enthusiasm for Merlin popped up again when I happened upon him in Sail magazine. He is an old school owner in a new school world. I think we need a lot more of you, Chip, in our sport.
Yeah.
His sense of respect and value for his crew and for his vessel is evident. So tell us about the book.
Well, yeah, I was encouraged to write the book, and I wanted to write it for a number of reasons, and one was to explain some of my philosophy and the joy that I've gotten out of sailboat racing. And I even dedicated it. It's amazing for a sailboat racer to say this, to all the race committees that are out there. So the book is dedicated to race committees, because most of the sailing I've done has been around the buoys and one design racing, and people are out there all day long helping my friends and myself and enjoy this great sport. And without them, we couldn't do it. And it gets a little bit into the teamwork that I think is so necessary in the sport, as well as the joy. It's a little bit of my philosophies and in life, like many it was from my father. I probably only bought Merlin because of my father. I was looking for a bucket list type thing to do with my dad, who's still with us, and he was a Coast Guard officer. He'd sailed in 2 Newport to Bermuda races, and I was looking around for a boat I could race out there, and all of a sudden Bill Lee had put up Merlin for sale, and well, that was the end of that. So I had to buy that boat. I'd thought about it since the time I was in college. I said if I ever had the opportunity and the means to buy that boat, I would, and I wanted to fulfill that promise. But the book itself was it's been well received. It's a fun little read for everybody, and I think most people would enjoy it.
I ordered it last night, so Julia will have a look at it. I ordered it on Amazon. It's available at, as they say, in most bookstores, and of course on Amazon.
Yes.
Let's play a video that you voiced some years ago about Merlin right after you bought it, For Sale magazine. And of course, we all know Fast is Fun, Bill Lee. He's also a member here at St. Francis as well, Santa Cruz Yacht Club, from down there where he lives, down south of us. And he's a fantastic guy, yacht designer. And we call him the Wizard for, obvious reasons. He conceived, designed, built the boat, raced it successfully. As we just said here Kenny Reed said in the foreword, really changed thinking about sailing, offshore sailing, at least in the Transpac, ultra light displacement boats, ULDB, or sleds as they're now your boat, and others, the Santa Cruz 70s, the Santa Cruz 52s, and the Alan Andrews. I see you had Alan Andrews involved in tuning the boat up after you bought it from Bill Lee. Bill having designed it, built it, sold it, and then it got sold several times, and then Bill bought it back, and then you bought it from him recently.
Yeah, so I when I went out, I met Bill. What a great individual. You're absolutely right. Bill and Lou Lee are just great people to be with. And Bill had told me that he'd worked with Alan Andrews, who I didn't know at all, to help put a keel back on the boat. And so I asked both Bill and Alan if they would look at the boat and see if we can retrofit it back to make it more modern, but still at the same time, I wanted to keep it the way it was from back when. Everybody on the West Coast kept telling me, such a, majestic boat, the way it looked, has such a history. And I didn't want to change it to make it look different, so that when people would see the boat, they would go, oh, there's Merlin. And yet we could make a number of changes to keep up with the times as much as what we're able to do. So it is really a different design, the way the boat was originally made in a chicken coop. So there's only so much you can do. But, with the carbon fiber and everything else, we spent a lot of time both with Bill and Andrew, Alan Andrews, doing this. And so I'm very lucky they're both around. They know the boat inside and out, and they've helped out tremendously.
I have as Julia knows, I have the great pleasure and honor of being an honorary member of Balboa Yacht Club. I do most of my racing down there because it's warm. It's cold up here, but it's warm. I have a lot of friends there because of the Governor's Cup, and I help out with the Governor's Cup television every year. And Alan Andrews, of course, a past Commodore of Balboa Yacht Club and a superb sailor. So he is one of the peaches of our sailing world. Let's take a look at this video that you voiced a couple of years ago about the beloved Merlin.
Merlin started from Bill Lee, starting making lighter designs, and Bill's belief that a ultralight displacement boat could be safe as well as go faster. As Bill told me one time, what's going to float better, a ping pong ball or a brick? And using that, he built Merlin in 1976, 1977. It was launched, it raced a couple times, and off it goes to Transpac, setting a record and winning. And then it's first to finish, and it won 2 more times after that. The boat was, bought and sold and chartered. Bill bought it back in 2016, and by that time, Merlin had a lot of changes done to it as people were trying to keep up with other boats. So Bill made the first change by taking off the cannon keel and putting on a keel that was straight. It's a bulb keel, so the keel now goes down 11 feet. It's got 12,000 pounds in it, so half the weight of the boat is in the keel. So after Bill sailed Transpac last year and did fairly well, we just bought it and continue to upgrade and I think modernize everything from the electronics. All the sails are new, mast boom. We kept the old spinnaker pole that's still around, but people are going to recognize it as being the old Merlin because it's got the same configuration up top. The paint job's the original, white that it used to have with the red, lettering on it. We had Billy involved with everything from the very beginning. When I first bought the boat from Bill, one of the things I had, hey, can you write down 10 things, Bill, that you would do to the boat and put them in the order that you think you would do them? And we pretty much followed, what he wrote down on that, including hiring Alan Andrews as the marine engineer that was overseeing everything that we've done. So I think Merlin will be a much more modern, a little bit lighter than it used to be, a stronger boat, and probably more safe as well. So, yeah, we're really excited about it. We hope that the boat's got a little more giddy up to it than it even had in the past. If that's believable. I've never been on an ocean race at all in the Pacific, so I'm looking forward to it. We anticipate and hopeful, that if we have good wind, that we'll be able to finish quicker than what we did last year. That's the goal. Obviously, to have a lot of fun and compete against as many people. But it being the 50th Transpac, it's a pretty big deal for Merlin. We're really excited, but we're curious to see exactly how well this boat's going to do. We'll find out soon enough, though.
Bravo Zulu. Nice video. Great video. Speaking of Balboa Yacht Club, Peter Bretschker, past Commodore Peter Bretschker is from Balboa Yacht Club, is on saying good afternoon. Very interested and a great guy about promoting the sport. I think a lot of people watching today, Chip, are because of they're really keen to hear your comments and our reactions to them. And of course, in the comments as well, to how we can make our sport more user-friendly and so on. Steve Groover says, I remember like it was yesterday when I got my issue of Sail magazine with a feature story about the just launched Merlin. They went 20 knots on day one, which was remarkable at the time. Tom Fishbeck, who's from SoCal, saying, and a longtime Fozy, he's saying Santa Cruz Yacht's requirement was drink holders for 6 beers next to the... Do you have 6 drink holders next to the helm still?
We have a lot of drink holders on that boat. You need them on slow days. I'll say that.
You just went
all on when the wind's blowing fast. And that boat just flies, and it's exciting as can be. To be on it. It's just amazing the amount of power that boat has. It's so different than the dinghy sailing that I grew up with. So for me, it's been a big change. I did not grow up in ocean racing whatsoever, and I've learned quite a bit over the time since I've owned this boat. But I also have a lot of respect for the power of it as well.
Bill these days crews a lot, or did with Beau Froelich, the aforementioned Commodore, past Commodore of our club here of St. Francis. Bill's designs often had a beer can sized hole in the deck to hold your beer without spilling. And I know that he sails a lot with Beau Froelich, or did on mine, and that boat's up for sale now. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was about to say, one of the reasons when you talk to Bill, one of the reasons why he wanted the boat to go fast was so that he could get to Hawaii first. And the way that would work is all the boats would then tie up to the first place boat. So you would get there, there's this big party, everybody has it. You have, the pineapple, the Mai Tais, it's just fantastic. Well, the next boat pulls up, there's another party. And Bill said he wanted to be, for every boat that came in, it would be another party.
Yes.
And that's where fast is fun, came from. If you're fast, you get there and you get to have more parties and enjoy yourself. And you have to, I admire him. He dress up in this wizard thing, and he understood this is a sport to have fun. That is the very basic. We're not, until the professionals came about. And Tom, when you and I were racing against each other in the 70s, there really weren't professionals out there doing this. It was a different day and age, at that time. And even today, the vast majority of all racing is done nothing other than for the sport, the camaraderie, and the fun of it.
Yep.
Yeah, we talk often on here about the social side, and Matthias Collins has given you 4 hand claps. He'd give you more if he probably had more time to click the emoji button. There in the comments. Matthias, who is a great sailor down in South America as well as up here. But I also wanted to note that the past president of Australian Sailing our super fozy Alistair Murray is on, and he wants to know, he's got a burning question, Chip. Did you buy the boat because of its name and your last name?
Well, so in part, yes. It was in my sophomore year of college, and Sports Illustrated had this article that came out about Bill making this boat. And I was just, oh my gosh, what a great story. What, I mean, he was taking on the man. He was taking on everybody. I'm going to do something different. He was a rebel with a cause.
Yes.
And the boat has my name. And I literally said, I made myself a promise. And I've told people, a lot of people over the years, I said, if I ever have a chance to buy that and I got the money to do it, I'm going to buy that boat. And I mean, when that came up and that boat was sitting there and I saw it that one night looking for another boat, you know, Denise, my better half, said she knew right away I was going to buy that boat. Chris Watts is watching this.
Yeah.
He saw me when I first came out there. Said, Chip, you had like no bargaining power. Everybody knew you wanted to buy that boat. You know, come hell or high water. And, you know,
Yes.
Bill was pretty tough on that. And I'm really happy he sold it to me. It's been nothing but a labor of love afterwards. And I feel very fortunate to be the owner of this boat.
Yeah, Ed Worley, who's another super fozy, grew up down in SoCal, and he's saying growing up in Southern California, Merlin was a yacht we all wanted to crew on.
Yeah.
And Bo Froelich is reminding us, Commodore Froelich is saying, we need to always remember that we the sport, are in the entertainment business. And by that, I'm sure he means not necessarily for television or journalism or media, but for ourselves. It's all for and about fun.
And we forget that a lot.
Well, and every sport goes through that as sports become more professional. And as Rick Bannerow said, as parents of Opti kids, so, you know, maybe my kid will get a college, you know, get some kind of a scholarship to go to your beloved college, Julie, to Stanford and sail on the sailing team, which has just won the co-ed nationals again, as well as the women's, Bravo Zulu. But still, it's about fun. And Alistair Murray, who, as you probably know, he grew up working for and then owned and was CEO for a long time of Ronstand, the big fitting company. But this guy is past president of Australian Sailing, and we've got a segment from him in regular segment called AAAA, Alistair's Awesome Aussie Anecdote. And they're all about what our beautiful sport is and should be and how much fun we can have doing it.
Right. And introducing us to wonderful people.
And he's going to do it again today. He's got some pithy comments.
Yes.
So let's talk about specifically what, Chip, what caused this to happen? What got you, because you got on the show in record time. I think we were talking last Saturday, and I said, why don't you come on the show on Friday? You're moving around. You got law offices in SoCal and in Tampa where you are now. And Tom Lewin is on here, and he's saying, I just sailed the SoCal 300 with Chip on the Mighty Merlin, one of the best owners I've sailed with. He always considers Merlin as the other person in the conversation, my kind of guy. And
oh, nice.
That's here's the SoCal 300 for those of you who are not familiar with our racing scene here in California, but it starts at the Santa Barbara Yacht Club, goes through the Channel Islands, and then out through a waypoint. How far out is that, Chip? Offshore?
About 100. Yeah, it says it's 100 miles. It's about 116 miles.
And then the finish, you turn and go, hopefully downhill, not always, and into San Diego for the finish. And that normally is an overnight race, right? You start at noon on Friday and get into San Diego in the afternoon. Is that right?
I mean, we could be down there overnight. I mean, it could be easily a 12-hour race for Merlin and some of the fast. I mean, the smaller boats are going to go slower, but you know, it's the type of thing they had. You know, at the latest, the trophy presentation I think was on Saturday afternoon for everybody to be there, and that was the plan. So it's the type of race, depending on the type of boat you got, that's going to go a day and a half and you know, at the latest, maybe 48 hours. Well,
and when you texted me, this was, I think you actually see, you had a nice Starlink connection, by the way, which I think you sent this to me from aboard the boat, and you are going at this point 2 or 3 knots, and you were not amused, shall we say. And what, 30 odd boats started? Is that right?
Yeah, 30, I think it was 35 boats started and 4 finished.
4?
4 at the very end. There was one boat that was 26 miles away from the finish, but one of their crew had a business engagement on, that they had to get to a flight on Sunday. And so they motored in after going through all of that and never did finish. Which,
So you were, needless to say, I guess it's not needless to say, but you were first to finish. And there you are headed back into San Diego, I guess sometime Saturday, but you were not amused. Why?
Well, I just felt, look, I've been around bay racing, dinghy racing, and races get postponed and canceled all the time when the wind starts, doesn't blow.
And shortened.
Or it blows too much, it becomes unsafe for us. And so it's just kind of a natural thing. And that way people go in at nighttime, you can't race with no lights and things like that. Ocean racing is different, and I get that. And people have different perceptions about, what ocean racing ought to be like. But I didn't feel like this particular race was something like the Transpac or the Newport Bermuda, the Mackinac, the Fastnet, Sydney Hobart or something. It's not the biggest race in the world. And no disrespect to the SoCal 300. I think it's an important race and a lot of fun, but the fun's the biggest part of it. Most people have taken off if they're going to do all 3 races, starting off just before Labor Day weekend, and they're going to race that week, get done on Saturday, get their boats back to wherever they need to go to, and off you go. And the wind models were not showing anything for us to get in anytime soon on after we got around that mark. I mean, they were getting bad. Everybody can see this, and a lot of the boats had already started retiring. And so we sent off, I asked somebody on shore if they could send a nice email asking the race committee if they might consider if there was going to be a change of course coming in. And we got back a response that was a little bit different, with a theory that they wanted to show respect to the course. And I can appreciate that. But I really think the first thing was, what do the participants, want? What would be fun for them? And what would it be like if we're out there doing something like that, regardless where everybody's going to finish? And I felt that if they let everybody know earlier that they could have raced down to that mark and then motored in, and we could have had a big party with everybody there. and instead, again, it's a big party there. And instead it was on, Sunday afternoon with 4 boats plus one who didn't finish but showed up anyway. I mean, I thought that was great, but it's just not the same. I mean, part of what we do, I love getting together with everybody after the race is over to talk about this and that and everything else that happened, going through those islands. I mean, in the middle of the night, we were probably 150 yards offshore with the surf getting louder and louder. Yeah. And I came up, guys, what are we doing here? And there's 2 other boats doing the same thing, which was stupid, really. But those are the types of things that we talk about being fun and having, and just everybody knows that's what sailing's about. Okay. Half of it is, what have you done in sharing common experiences? Why did you go this way? What did you do here? How did you get through this?
Chip, you're being too polite. I'm known for not being polite. You are obviously very polite and diplomatic, but here I check around because I sail with all those guys and sail with the gang down there in Southern California and Fast Exit and a few of the other boats. In fact, here I'm going to just put the results up. There is the ORR Division A that you won and were the only finisher. Fast Exit, John Raymond's boat didn't finish. Pavonius 2, me, all these other boats, they all bailed. And I went through the other divisions, and basically, as you said, all but 4 boats bailed and didn't finish. And here's the problem, and tell me if I've got this wrong, but I've checked around, talked to people, and I know Jeff Johnson, who's the race committee chair and the race director at Waterfront director at San Diego Yacht Club, know him well. And sometimes people think that they're running, as you said, the Fastnet race, when what they're really doing, as Bo Froelich said, they're supposed to be running entertainment for a whole lot of people who this is their weekend, or, it's their avocation, not their vocation. So everybody knew it was going to be light last weekend. There was a big high pressure system over the West Coast, beautiful weather, no wind. It was going to be 2-3 knots. It was going to take forever to get from Santa Barbara down. And I've sailed through the islands in the Santa Barbara King Harbor race, yada, yada. I understand what it's like. It's a nice sail. It's a nice race. But not when you're out in the ocean 150 nautical miles and there's no wind. What were you going, 2.5 knots?
A lot of time we were doing 2.5 knots. I mean, it was not what I would consider fun racing whatsoever. And most people would not go out to go sailing if it's only blowing 2.5 knots, and knowing it was going to blow 2.5 knots.
Exactly.
Most of us would never do that.
No.
And I've seen emails and texts back and forth and polite, hey, why are we doing? Can't you shorten the course? Can't we, maybe instead of sailing all the way to San Diego, or maybe we do the coastal down instead of going way out and then back in, or maybe we ought to sail to Newport Beach, which is still a pretty good long race, and then call it a day there, and then motor down to San Diego and have the party, whatever. But something is wrong when we run races in way too much wind for weekend club racing, or when there's no wind. In our club, I grew up on this little pond, as you know, in Michigan. And Clark Chapin's on here. He's a past commodore of the club, and a lot of us all have grown up in these same environments. And for a long time, we call it off for too much wind because you didn't want people to get hurt and you didn't want boats to get broken. And we were always watching the weather radar once we had it to be sure we weren't racing in the face of a tornado, which can happen up in Michigan. But then there was this period of time when we're going to start the race come hell or high water at 1300 or whatever time. And if there's no wind, I learned to smoke a cigarette. I never smoked, but I learned to smoke a cigarette to hold it up to see which direction the wind, what whisper, what, zephyr of wind. And we'd jibe before anybody else did, and we'd gain a boat length or two. And you'd sit out there cooking in the hot August afternoon, and we should have been on shore having a nice, relaxing Diet Coke. What saith you?
As a racer, I mean, you have to get used to racing in light wind. My concern, and I am being diplomatic because I really do appreciate the fact that people take their time to be on race committees, take their time, most of them voluntarily, to do so to help the rest of us go race. At the same time, it's, especially in these situations, there's a reason why people shorten the course, and that is typically it's going to take too long. People do have other commitments. This is supposed to be for fun, and I think when we think about that up front, that what can we do to help the participants to have as much fun as possible, so that they're going to have these great memories and want to come back next time because they're looking forward to it because it was so fun last time, to tell their friends, to get others interested in it. That's what it's all about. And the more people we have doing this that are absolutely having fun, and I agree with you, Tom, there is a certain element of people that put pressure on kids to go race early when it ought to be having a lot of fun. Very few people are ever going to become professional sailors and make enough money at it. It's just not that type of sport, or not that type of sport yet. And the main emphasis really is to enjoy the outdoors, to enjoy each other, to enjoy what our sport's traditionally been about. And that's why I got upset like a lawyer does, and like a good lawyer think I can do something about this. And so I knew you had this show. There was a couple other entities I wrote something to, but I meant it in a progressive and positive way. I don't mean to demean anybody, on this. And I think we all ought to think about what we can do to make our sport as fun as possible, to have the most participants, because the more people that show up, as Bill Lee would say, the bigger the party is. The
bigger the party, especially at the end.
Yeah.
Well, is this a one-off thing? I mean, not to belabor the point. San Diego Yacht Club, a fine yacht club, runs great races, and they know about light air down there. But Clark Chapin in the comments is quoting my father, who's 92 and still works all day, every day, and is still sharp as a tack. He says, Clark is reminding me about my dad's, what he calls the misery index, that rises for cold temperatures, too much wind, high temperatures, and not enough wind. Not a quantitative formula, but we all know when the misery index is rising. So how do we, as I say, is this a one-off thing, or do you sense that this is a bigger problem across the sport?
I sense that we need to have greater discussion about how we can make this fun and interesting and something that people really look forward to, especially now that I'm doing ocean racing. I really wasn't exposed to it much. I was a around the buoys type sailor. I always have been. And now that I'm out here doing this, I'm concerned about the sport. I want to see more people doing it. We live in a different time where there's so many other things to do, and time pressure seems to be on everybody this sport does take some time. And so what we have to do is first think, what is it that we can do to make this as fun as possible for everybody to want to participate, so that it is truly a competitive sport where you have a lot of people competing against you and looking forward to it the next time. And I always think that's where we start with it. I guess somebody said entertainment. Yeah, this is the greatest entertainment in the world because it's real life and you're involved in it. You're not watching somebody, you're a participant in this sport. And so what else would you want?
Yeah. Well, as Ted Turner said, it's the most fun you can have with your clothes on. And of course, everybody says that about their sport, I suppose, if they're really passionate about it. Well, is it an attitudinal thing? It's more than one off. We all know that's more than one off. You get every now and then and I'm not picking on Jeff. I think he honestly, sincerely, seriously made a mistake, and maybe they didn't have options. There's a bit of a bureaucracy there running this SoCal Race Week thing. It's, as you said, it's the 3 different races, and there's representatives of the various yacht clubs involved, including St. Francis. And Felix Herr-Weidling is our representative to this, our race director. And I think there is the pressure just to go yacht racing and run the race, because otherwise you got to make a judgment decision, and you'll upset some people if you do something other than just start at 1,300 and run the race.
Well, you can't make it, it could be perfect. As Bobby Kennedy said, 20% of people would still complain about something. I'm not worried about that. I'm happy that we're having this discussion this afternoon. I think it's an important discussion. One, frankly, ought to be front and center all the time about what is it we do to get more people to participate in this great sport at all levels that we've got.
Right.
That ought to be something everybody should be talking about before every regatta when we're planning it. We should be looking for even what can we do to make certain we have other people who want to be on the race committees, and so that they'll take over, who wants to take over in the leadership. And you do that by, things don't happen by accident, Tom, you know that. And they happen because people plan it out, they speak up, they say something, and you say it in a positive way. And so I don't mean to mean this demeaning at all, but one of the things that I really do appreciate about the St. Francis Yacht Club is its outspokenness with respect to wanting to promote the sport of sailing. And I appreciate you having me on this afternoon, and I hope everybody that's watching will think about it, and also say we ought to have discussion about this at our various yacht clubs, because it's the lifeblood for every single yacht clubs. How do we get people out sailing? Once people get started, it is a great sport. You're on it. It's a sport you can do your entire life. It will never go away. You and I are getting to be a bit older, and we still love it as much, and we can still participate. I get to race against the very best national champions. I get to race against the professionals if I want to. So it's a great sport.
Indeed. And back to what Clark Chapin was saying, my dad is widely credited with coming up with what was then the 1080 rule. He had, for our local club, a 3-circling rule, 1080 rule, which got developed, got written into the rules of, eventually here in the States, and then ultimately by what was then IWIRU as the 720 rule. And I had a hand in promoting umpiring back in the 80s with Congressional Cup, because, again, not because anybody wanted to go umpire yacht races, but we were trying to make it more fun, particularly for the maxi owners. They were the first ones that asked us to do some umpiring of their maxi match racing in Newport in the 70s, it was actually in the 80s, after the America's Cup 86, 87. And they said, we want to go in and have a party. We don't want to sit in protest hearings all night. So the 720 rule, which I think has been a huge help, the umpiring has been a big help at all. And I've never imagined that umpiring would get used as broadly as it is now, all professional sailing, the Olympics, yada, yada. But we need to continue this discussion, and not only maybe the misery index, we adopt that and say, not to codify it, but say, hey, what's the misery index if we start everybody here at Santa Barbara and the prediction is for 2 or 3 knots of wind? And that, to be fair, the weather forecasts are not always correct, but they're a hell of a lot better than they were 50 years ago when you and I started sailing, or Julia started sailing. So what else? What other good ideas do we have for the sport besides jawboning this issue and being sure race committees are not afraid to shorten and or abandon, instead of thinking that it's a Mount Everest? This is our Mount Everest. I think that's what you were told.
Well, I mean, that was something that was indicated. I think that was an analogy, trying to make an analogy that we really need to, part of ocean racing is that you actually finish the race and going there. It's a distance race. It is different than going around the buoys. And I can appreciate that view. I just happen to really disagree when everybody else quits and,
Yeah.
all my competitors are gone. This is crazy. I mean, there was one of the classes that had nobody finish.
Yeah, I saw that.
And literally that boat that was in lead went around that marker and turned on the motor and went in. So we're not accomplishing anything when everybody quits because it's not fun. That absolutely is not what we want.
Well, yeah, exactly. When 90% of the fleet has quit, you would think that they would have the ability to abandon the race and at that waypoint out in the ocean, and then you could have all motored in. Okay, you could have sailed if you wanted to, but it's still motoring in would have been a lot more fun than drifting in for another day.
But we can do a lot more. I mean, I'm happy to see that Ragtime has been retrofitted. It'll be out there racing, against us coming up in the Transpac. I think that's fantastic. The history, I think, means a lot. The lore of the older boats, and it's great to see the new boats being developed and the suggestion that other sailors like myself that predominantly race on shore, hey, why don't you jump on, become a crew, or find, a boat and go out there and do this offshore race. You'll find it very different, very novel. And after you do it, you get the itch to go back and do it again because it's so fun. It's very different to be out on the ocean. I have a lot of respect for it. It's very different. But again, there's a boat for everybody. Mike Sudo on that crazy boat that's got the fish chip on it, and he has the best time of anybody racing, and he has people that are out there having fun doing it. His number one crew, I think, is a woman weathercaster or newscaster that's going to take care of the drones for him, and that's how you go about and showing what the sport can be for everybody. It doesn't mean you have to be on a boat like Merlin going super duper fast. You could enjoy yourself going super duper slow if you want to, if you have the right people on it, and be talking about it. And then at the end, party with us all anyway.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. And I guess it's good to think about it and see the comments and hear your strong views. And we talk about it on the show all the time about how we've got to keep the fun factor high. And I see in the comments, everybody, Bo Froelich is talking about the two big fun races here on the bay. Steve Gruber is looking forward to Ragtime versus Merlin in the Transpac. Blake Middleton is saying that the Wayzata Yacht Club, which is one of the famously good inland clubs up in Minnesota, still average 113 boats every week on their, I think it's Thursday night racing for their fun club racing. And it's all about the fun. They go out and go sailing unless there's thunderstorms or a tornado. They don't have tornadoes much in Minnesota, but thunderstorms they do. And then the big thing is the most important is to socialize afterwards. And we keep talking about it, apropos of which, one other idea I saw just in preparing for having Chip on today, Julia, I saw on Chip, Chicago Yacht Club, starting right about now, has a series of learn to crew nights on some night at their, I don't know if it's at Monroe Street or at the other station, but Chicago Yacht Club invites people to come, members, non-members, whomever. They first of all say, here's how you crew in an offshore, this is about offshore sailing, how to crew on a big boat. And then they get you onto a big boat. And ultimately, after X many nights of this, with owners having volunteered their boats and the owners aboard and probably steering and so on, but then the crew, all these newbie crew, the boat is fully crewed by the newbies. And after 4, 5, 6 weeks, I'd never heard of that. And I just thought that was a great idea. Crew night, learn to crew. And the other thing we talk about on here, Chip, all the time is getting kids on big boats, because we know we lose kids in the teenage years. Exactly. They get up, they're pushed by the pushy parents, some of them. Other of them, as Paul Henderson always reminds us from Royal Canadian Yacht Club up in Toronto, he says, well, people start to get interested in the opposite sex, and that's more interesting. Today we're competing with phones, with television, with all this other stuff, gaming. But if you can make it fun, which, by the way, Royal Canadian Yacht Club has that super fun facility in town which is more of a sports club than it is a yacht club. But of course, they're a big city, rich, affluent club. But we can all do that at varying levels, right? Make it fun for everybody all the time. Final word.
I mean, there's no limit to the creativity that humans might have to make things fun, and so I applaud that One Yacht Club for doing it that way. And the Chicago Yacht Club's a great yacht club, and the fact that they're able to get people out there within 5 weeks all by themselves on a boat that is a ocean going boat, I applaud them a lot. And maybe that's something everybody else can emulate as well. I certainly think that thinking outside the box is the way to do this. And again, if it doesn't work, we'll just find another way to go do it. But again, that's just more people out there in our sport, which I think is important, not just for those of us that are amateurs trying to have fun, but if you think about it deeply, extraordinarily important to those that are professionals as well. The sail makers, the boat, riggers, everybody who takes care of the boats, to the yacht clubs, and those that really are making a living from it want to see, those of us participating at a high level and as much as possible enjoying the sport. So it's important for everybody.
Well,
that we do this.
It's important for the pros to have more participation, whether they're sailmakers or pro racers or boat captains or whatever. Exactly right.
I'm always amazed at how many members grow out of crews.
Good point.
And they can come and be on the race committee.
And your club, our club, St. Francis, has quite a good program about promoting people from a crew status. They have an inexpensive crew membership status. Then when you get old and rich like you, Chip, and you're not that old as we are, but when you get older and more affluent, then you start paying the regular dues, and you say, I can't imagine not being a member of St. Fancy, as we call it. A good point. You must know Tom Pace, who's a past Commodore of Pensacola Yacht Club. Chip, he's in the chat saying, Pensacola clubs are making loads of those steps to increase the participation and play, and we fully applaud Chip's points. I'd say we try new things, get them in the in the NORs and the SIs, the sailing instructions, for proof of concept, and then make the steps to be a bit more flexible. And if you saw our show the other day on Tuesday with Charlie Enright, again, one of the things we're missing, Chip, in the sport, and it used to happen, was when what is now U.S. Sailing, it used to have 2 meetings a year, and I talked to Charlie again about this, so I'll one more time say it, that 2 meetings a year, we'd get together in either Chicago or Dallas in the spring as the mid-year meeting, trade ideas, the sailors, people who owned Merlin, Buddy Melgus, Dennis Conner, the keen racing sailors showed up to these meetings. And you had the formal meetings, but the real stuff was at the bar. You'd belly up to the bar to somebody and say, hey, how do you do that at Davis Island Yacht Club? I was down there for the Fireball Midwinters years ago. How do you do that at Wayzata Yacht Club? How do you do that at St. Francis? What works at St. Francis in, big air and current out in front of the club is not going to work necessarily off Point Loma or in San Diego Bay. But at least you're trading ideas. And then you go back to the club and you try it or don't. Or you try it and it works, or you try it and it doesn't work. Then you go back to the annual meeting in October, which moved around the world, so you got different markets. We'd be in Tampa, St. Pete, have a huge meeting. We'd be at Oklahoma City at the Oklahoma City Boat Club on Lake, I couldn't remember the name of that lake the other day. Not as many people, but sometimes you'd get people that you'd never heard of or seen, and they might then participate longer term.
Or make a lifelong friend.
Oh, and that too. But the annual meeting then moved around the country, and you got different audiences and different people, and it was a much better exchange of information constantly. Best practices.
That Sir Thomas Lipton trophy that got up to Colorado got up there with some different sailing. I guarantee you that.
You bet.
There's all kinds of sailing all over the United States that goes on. There's a lot of lake sailing that goes on through the Midwest and various areas that people love, and on reservoirs. I'm going to be sailing up in Lake Carlisle later this month in the Flying Scot Nationals, and it's best I can figure out, I was in the middle of nowhere, but I'm looking forward to it. And it's definitely very different than being out in the Pacific Ocean and racing to California, to Hawaii, which I'll be doing early next month.
Well, you are the classic sailor, large boat, small boat. Carlisle's a great place to sail. It is sort of out in the middle of nowhere. And, those two, there's Carbondale and Carlisle, and those reservoirs didn't exist because when they had the Olympics in St. Louis in, what was it, 1904, they didn't have any water, so they didn't have sailing Olympics in that year.
St. Louis, yeah.
But yeah, Carlisle's a great place to sail, and I'm fond of it because I won with Major Hall, we won the Championship of Champions there in, I won't say before you were born, Chip, because you're not quite that young, but
Tom Lewin
long time ago.
Tom Lewin is saying the fact that this conversation is actually about how people want to have fun within our sport, not change the rating system to X or Y to benefit me, is fantastic.
Exactly right.
And Chip is so inspirational. Makes me think harder about showing up at my local Everett YC.
And that's Dogzilla Monster, a.k.a. Stingray, who's in the witness protection program up in Seattle. We know who he is. We don't read comments from people unless we know who they are. Dan Jaspers, the Youth Tequila Y2K program run down in Antigua, is helping young Antiguans get into race yachting and onto big boats. Yes, great stuff, Dan. Thank you for that. And has been a super successful program and has the contact Allison Sly Adams. So, yeah, we need to keep talking about it, I guess. There's nothing else we can do, right, except keep talking about it.
Well, obviously, talk then leads to action. Most of the time I find, sure, let's go do it. Next thing you know, people are actually planning out and off you go. But it's everything from having all the different kind of things that go on a 4th of July type thing at a yacht club, all sailing backwards, trying to find the watermelons and things like that people know about. To what is it again? Humans are really good about thinking about the crazy ways we can go have fun. We need to make certain we do that intentionally in our sport.
Right on. Good point. Good. Sir, thank you very much. We appreciate your coming on, as always.
Come back.
Come back, indeed.
It's Tom, you've done so much, and thank you, guys. Y'all are the best. Thank you very much. I'll be back anytime. And for everybody, it's going to be racing in the Flying Scots at the Flying Scot Nationals. I look forward to seeing what I can do out there this year. And for everybody out in Southern California going to Hawaii, I look forward to seeing you too. It's really that is a great regatta, the Transpac.
It is.
Looking forward to it.
Much appreciated. You've inspired a lot of people. And as Julia likes to remind us, go back and read
the comments.
Because they pour in. Chip, we don't turn the comments off. Most people watch the show on replay. We'll have 1,000 or something, give or take, maybe 2,000 watching it live. But then we get a lot more people watching it in replay, and we leave the comments open because we so rarely get trolled. We rarely get any croutons coming on and making personal attacks or name calling or using coarse language, of which we don't approve.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Yes. Thank you very much. Talk again soon.
God bless. Thank you so much.
Ciao. Well, that was fun, Julia, as always. We have had a run of good guests, haven't we?
Yeah.
And we have a good one coming up Tuesday. I don't have a picture of him yet, but we've got Luca Devote coming on the show Tuesday, and we're going to talk about the America's Cup in Naples, about his new foiling boat, and a whole lot of other cool stuff that only Luca, the crazy, mad, keen, crazy Italian, Olympic medalist, yacht designer. I mean, the guy is he's a Renaissance man at once, but he's also out there. He's super bright, super cool. He'll be with us.
And speaking of fun.
And fun. He's a lot of fun. Speaking of fun, we got Jon Emmett's coaching corner coming up here. He was caught in a traffic jam this morning, and he was texting with me, and I said, John, just stop your car, get out, and use your iPhone and shoot something, because we all love to hear from you.
Yeah.
And he did, but he did get to Weymouth and did shoot us a report. Here's his.
Hi, Tom, Julia, and all the Fozy. Well, it's a bit of a late one today, so you can guess where I am. Not that I'm lost, but I think I've probably run out of time to record exactly how I wanted to. So this is a very lastminute.com, so it can make it into the show. So normal quality will be resumed next week. So usual, first of all, if you haven't done so already, please like, share, subscribe on YouTube, or follow on Tom Eamon or Sailing Illustrated. So it's probably quite hard to tell from the background. Let's see if you can guess where I am, and I will be revealing all next week. So it's somewhere I've been before, and it's probably arguably one of the top locations in the UK. The UK have recently announced like a centre of excellences. I think it's probably around 4 clubs, including the academy at Weymouth where I'm based. So I'll be talking a lot more about that. But in the meantime, before I go and unload, etc., I'm just going to talk very briefly about working together, because it's something that's really important, whether you're talking about clubs, classes, federations, whatever the situation, we all need to work together towards the common good. And the thing is, the more people you have involved, then you're never going to get everybody to agree all the time. And I think this is especially true with parasailing, where we're getting different classes to come together to really push for Brisbane 2032, and we need to have some alignment. So it's alignment between the clubs, alignment between the classes, the governing bodies, so we can have a united front, because that, to the external organisation, that's what looks good, and that's how we sell ourselves with this sort of common goal. Isn't sailing a great sport? And just showcasing what we can do. And sometimes I feel we really need to invest, specifically media. I like to see us spending more money on media, not only because I do some work there, and I have to say the vast majority of what I do is volunteer work, but if we're looking for external sponsors, they're going to want fantastic video, fantastic photographs to display their brand. I mean, it's no coincidence that the America's Cup has premium brands wanting to be associated with it. But sailing, and we, of course, we're all biased, otherwise we wouldn't be Fozy, is a fantastic sport, and we just need to sell it. Yeah, that's as simple as that. But the way we do that is we need to really work together, because we're all sailors, whether we're foilers or non-foilers, keel boats, hikers, trapezers. I don't know what you call people who sail in international canoes, plankers, yeah. But we're all sailors. We all enjoy the wind, the water. Need to be careful not to get wet feet. And that is what brings us all together. And the pandemic, again, big learning lesson, how important it is to be sociable, but to be outside and in the fresh air. And one of the things that did come up from the Dutch event, which was a fantastic event, we had one day off where we all just stood around and chatted. And, there's still COVID around. A lot of people got sick. And I think, we need to look after ourselves, and a bit of vitamin D. You probably won't get that much of it this weekend. It's very important. And I think the Northern Hemisphere racing is now kicking off in all earnest. So hopefully Weymouth at least will be mainly Westleys between now and November. And yeah, there's so much sailing going on at the moment, it's hard to know what to cover. But the theme for the Coaching Corner is very much working together. So with that in mind, stay safe, as I said, especially with a little bit of COVID going around. Look after each other, sail fast, and keep having fun. See you soon.
It was pretty good for just getting out there with his phone. And he wasn't in Weymouth, he's in Hailing Island. That's what must be where, I think John, I think he's always trying to stay one step ahead of the authorities. Have somebody chasing, because he doesn't tell me where he's going. I have to sort of suss it out after I get his video. And I thought he'd driven back to Weymouth. I knew he was driving somewhere, but my goodness, John, you're in wonderful. John Gordon Smith agrees. And yes, he watches the countdown clock. Maybe not as much as we do, because that's how we know when these videos end. If I haven't had a chance to watch them to the end, although I did watch John's. Today, Jon Emmett Sailing, Get to the Front of the Fleet, our regular reportage every Tuesday and Friday from Jon Emmett, the Super Coach and the Super Fozy in the UK. Now, here's the disturbing, maybe even smelly news coming out of world sailing. I don't know how to characterize this, but Magnus the Magnificent, Magnus Wheatley wrote about this a few months ago, back in December, and this was right after Kwan Hai Lee was reelected president. He secured the votes, but must make his world sailing presidency count, Magnus said back in December. And here's a picture of him at one of the I don't know if that's James Pleasance looking over his shoulder or not. I'm not 100% sure. A lot of people think James Pleasance ought to be the next head of world sailing, and how well we would be served by having somebody of his erudition, knowledge, experience running the place. But Kwan Hai Lee, who was reelected president at the Singapore annual meeting last November, and I don't know for sure, Julia, but allegedly, he's less of a sailor and more of a party man for the CCP. And they ran the meeting in Singapore. They flew in at apparently the expense of the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, or China, the Chinese Sailing Federation. And they flew in a lot of heads of small Asian governing bodies because they would then have votes for Mr. Kwan Hai Lee at the annual meeting, and he did get narrowly reelected. And for better or worse. And a lot of us think, including, well, I won't quote anybody else, but it's been a bit difficult. And this is what Magnus wrote about it at the time. Remember those elections at the beginning of November where the world held its collective breath? No, not the U.S. election, presidential election. The ones that will actually have a direct and lasting impact on the sport you love. Not so much MAGA as, I don't know how to pronounce that, MIGA, make yachting great again. And President Kwan Hai Lee now needs to set a course that champions specifics, the unloved areas of our sport, even the loved areas, if he is truly to leave a lasting legacy. And I might remind you too, Julia, that he's the one who said, if I'm reelected, I will get Chinese sponsorship and we'll have a lot of money flowing into the Federation. In fact, this was his campaign mantra before he got elected the first 4 years. Now he's in his second 4 years. And apparently the quid pro quo was that he had to move the office from London to China in order to get that money. We didn't know that, as he was promising everybody big Chinese support, which has not come to fruition.
Nor would changing the office.
Well, exactly. I mean, there's a whole lot of good reasons why it should be in London, not in someplace else, or at least in Europe. But that's another issue. Magnus goes on to say, early signs aren't great, meaning after the second 4-year election in December. World sailing appears as dysfunctional as ever, with the president seemingly sitting on one of those children's play toys that you see outside supermarkets, where you put the money in and the child can press buttons, steer the wheel, honk the horn, and pull levers, but still it just broncos sedately backwards and forward. Don't you think that's a great metaphor?
I've never thought of it.
Huh?
Yes, I
That's
do.
fabulous. Oh, my goodness, Magnus. Great fun for the kids in the car for the duration of the ride, but utterly pointless otherwise. Let's hope it changes in his second presidential term. Well, I'm sorry to report, and I have spent a good bit of the week since our Tuesday show checking to be sure I had my facts at least 90 or 95% correct. But one hears, and this is the CEO, he's under a lot of pressure, but apparently, okay, I'll tell you what I heard, and I don't know if this is just, well, one heard previously that if the America's Cup was in the Middle East, that he was going to go back to the Middle East and help run the Cup. And remember, he ran Omani, I think it was Oman or Qatar, Oman. He ran sailing in one of the countries in the Middle East. And this David Graham, the CEO, and he's a Brit and a good guy, and everybody likes him. But how effective he is another issue, because in the last couple weeks, one hears that the head of legal on his staff has resigned. One hears that the head of IT, who's a key person, of course, in any modern day organization, has resigned and is in fact suing World Sailing. One hears that and this is perhaps most important, that the head of events, who was fairly recently hired, by the way, after a good guy who was head of events resigned some months ago, the new guy, or I think it was a guy, including the head of events, including the Olympic regatta, has also just resigned.
Oh, my.
And as I say, I've checked this out with any number of people, And worse yet, still, I hear from other sources, which I've checked out, that Rolex is scaling back their involvement, their support of world sailing, if not pulling out totally. There's good news, bad news there, because we know they're still strongly supportive of the big events like Big Boat Series here, like Sydney Hobart, like the Fastnet race, and New York Yacht Club events, and so on. But they have pulled Rolex sponsorship back from the countries, from New York for this country in North America, and they pulled it back from London, and it's all being run out of Geneva, which in these big companies, it's a cycle it goes through.
Right.
Some new CEO comes in and may delegate back to the countries, we don't know. But Rolex is crucial to our sport, and those of you who have any influence and all that, you want to do a good job taking good care of Rolex, who've now taken this senior position in SailGP. So it may be that they're focusing away from some of these other events, Julia.
Yes.
And more toward things like SailGP with eyeballs and media and so on. Something is up, regardless, at World Sailing. I'm not happy to say, because just when I thought we were getting some stability now with Charlie Enright here at U.S. Sailing, and I am optimistic that he will right the ship financially and otherwise, that maybe this World Sailing situation was not going to get worse, but apparently it has.
Alistair Murray says he's having dinner with David Graham in a few weeks.
Good. Alistair, let us know. I've heard from others who are in regular contact with the office, with the staff members, and I don't need to say who, but this is not coming from one person. This is not coming from somebody who's got an axe to grind. This is from people who, like Julie, like you and I, are seriously concerned about the future of our beloved sport, and not just the Olympics.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's Kwan Hai Lee, the president, now on his second term, but only just into his first year of 4. Kwan Hai Lee with the former IOC president Thomas Bach from Germany. And that relationship's important for a whole lot of reasons.
It is.
For obvious to all of you. The other thing that's concerning is that still, even though we were promised in May a final decision on the Olympic venue, we still don't have that. And I've asked around why we don't, and there's not much coming out of World Sailing. You would think at least, and you heard Charlie, I put Charlie's feet politely to the fire the other day. What's going on with Long Beach and the Olympic 2028 venue? And he said, I don't have a dog in that fight. I'm paraphrasing now, but I just want to know, we want to know when it is, where it is, so we can get on with our plans. So we still, unless somebody knows something I don't, we still think that the Crutonic LA politicians are trying to move it from the correct venue, which of course is Long Beach, to this other venue, which of course is San Pedro.
Jon Emmett just says Lee will move under the IOC after this term.
Well, let's see. Let me finish this, and then we'll go to the comments. Ping the World Sailing CEO, please. Ping David Graham, the aforementioned and the aforepictured, David.Graham, if you haven't already. Julia, thank you for doing so yourself. David.Graham@sailing.org. But now I was hearing the decision was going to be announced. Final. We still think it's going to be there. The people in Long Beach think it's going to be there. LA 28 still shows Long Beach as the venue on their website. That is LA 28, the local organizing committee, the LA organizing committee. But there's still this doesn't smell right, doesn't feel right. And with all these people leaving World Sailing, it even gets a little less, how shall I say, it gets a little more smelly. There's something going on. There's something that's not correct. And I have a bad feeling about this. Ted Ryman says one hears that Andy Hunt, the non-sailing CEO, will be back. I don't think so. Now Jon Emmett is saying, Julia, that the Olympic venue announcement will be by July.
Right.
It keeps getting put off. Why?
Because nobody's going to make the decision.
No, follow the money. When stuff doesn't add up, when stuff doesn't smell right, you got to follow the money. And I have this bad feeling that the Port of LA and the South Terminal, owned by big Chinese interests, are saying we want an Olympic event here, and they're putting pressure on Quan Hai Lee to move for World Sailing to push LA 28 to move it from Long Beach to San Pedro, which is Crotonic. And just ask any sailor. Ask Bill Canfield, a longtime senior serious guy in the world governing body, and of course, former president of the Virgin Islands Sailing Association, and the famous father of the famous Taylor Canfield. Rick Bannerow reminds us you can always count on self-interest because that horse is in the race. Dennis Conner's favorite saying. If any of you has any influence on this, it's time that this gets sorted out once and for all, because everybody does need to know, as Charlie Enright said. And by the way, if you haven't seen Tuesday's show, you and I both watched it the next day. I can't watch it the same day.
No.
I'm such an idiot on here, and I'm so insecure. My skin is so thin and
white,
and I can't watch it till the next day.
Yeah.
And then I did watch the entire show, in part for technical reasons. We want to see technically what we do well or not so well, but also for content. And that show's had close to 4,000 views.
Yes.
From Tuesday. I haven't looked. I don't look for views. We look for names in the comments. We are more interested in cool people. Cool people like all of you who are watching this show, and especially those of you who comment, because if you agree, great. If you don't agree, let us have your comments, pro or con. We appreciate them very much. As we appreciated having Chip on for today's show. He is a BOFA, a breath of fresh air.
Absolutely.
Huh?
Absolutely.
Julio, June 6th, 1859 is the subject of this day in history. Any ideas?
1859.
You want a clue?
Yep.
You think it's related to the America's Cup, which happened, of course, in 1851. It's not, for once, but it happened around the America's Cup Zero, AC0, as I call it. There's your first clue. Let's see if anybody on the chat gets it.
It's somebody's new king.
No.
Well, it's an offshoot of the Brits, one way or the other.
Yeah, that's the Union Jack in the corner.
Yep.
See if anybody in the chat knows this. Jody Shields is on. You asked the question, Tom, in today's show, how are we going to get sailing back to the glory days? Well, you just have answered your own question. The common person has zero intercom paying fees to just line the pockets of, has no interest, I think he meant, paying fees to those lining the pockets of those at the top of the sport, and in the same time get very little return on our own investment. Good point. No, Gordon, not Malta. Ed Worley, it would be a long tow from Long Beach, Naples Yacht Club boat ramps to San Pedro. Blake Middleton, as usual, has been doing his research, I assume. Queensland is established as a separate colony from New South Wales. The date is celebrated as Queensland Day in 1859.
Oh.
And he is correct. Well done.
Wow.
Blake Middleton up in Minnesota.
Yes.
That is the correct answer.
I'm proud of you.
And I thought it was good, Julia, to do a little segment here on Queensland and particularly on Brisbane because of the 2032 Olympics headed there. We keep talking about it. And there is the coast, Brisbane down at the bottom, and the central part of the state, which is now a state, not a colony, obviously, Queensland, QLD. And Mackay and Fitzroy are the two big areas in the central part of the state of Queensland, central Queensland. And there's the sub-regions. But this is a beautiful town. That is Brisbane. I've never been. I want to go, and these pictures whetted my appetite.
Yes.
No pun intended, with all the water surrounding the city on both sides, both inland and then, of course, on the coast. Capital and most populous city of Queensland.
Right.
Look at these beautiful shots.
Yes. Gorgeous.
Have you been?
Yes.
Oh, you have? Well, you've been everywhere.
I spent a lot of time in Australia.
You and your late husband loved Australia.
Yes.
You must have had a boyfriend down there, too, did you?
No. I brought him with me.
Oh, you took your late husband with you. This is the cricket grounds, and I guess they got to do something bigger than this for the Olympic Stadium because it only seats 42,000, but it's a popular sport, of course, in Oz and beyond, India and New Zealand and others. But what a fabulous looking
Your dream
place.
destinations are open and holiday ready because nothing beats Queensland.
Nothing beats a riverside beer. So pull up a chair and join us.
Looking to escape the noise? Nothing beats our hinterland escapes.
Or come feel the Queensland spirit and admire our spectacular backyard.
Nothing beats our magical coastline, best viewed from way up high.
We can't wait to welcome you to Queensland.
So don't wait a minute longer and book your next sunshine escape, because nothing,
Absolutely nothing beats Queensland.
Did you see the name of that brewing company? Felons? Like penal, like felons? Felons. The guy had it on his shirt, too. I want, come on, somebody, send us, somebody in Brisbane, send us a Felons something that I can put back here on Pedro Foiling Sailor's Crouton Corner from Brisbane. What a fabulous looking city.
Yes.
Did you go out on the beach, Julie? Did you go surfing?
No, not there.
Man, what a place. A public meeting was held in 1851, the year of AC 0, as you all know, to consider the proposed separation of Queensland from New South Wales. On this date, in 1859, Queen Victoria signed letters patent to form the separate colony of Queensland as a self-governing crown colony with responsible government. Brisbane blue. Brisbane was selected as the capital city on 10 December 1859. There was a proclamation, yada, yada, but that's what happened on this date. It became a separate colony and then later a separate state, this day in history, in 1859. Now, they also have a famously good yacht club.
Yes.
We talk about them on here often. Have you been to the Royal Queensland Yacht Squadron?
Yes, just in and out.
You have. Well, here is a video.
Royal Queensland is the largest yacht club in Australia.
You're on the air, you know.
Oh.
You can say it. Alistair Murray's comment. The Royal Queensland Yacht Squadron is the largest yacht club in Oz.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I didn't either. Alistair Murray is replying to Bill Canfield. We need a show on Julia. We've done a show on Julia. This is your life. We did that some years ago.
This is Julia's husband.
But Bill Canfield wants a show on your husband. He sounds interesting.
He was very interesting.
He was interesting.
Yes.
He's a cool guy. And this is a cool club. I mean, you talk about people that look like they're having a lot of fun all the time. I can't wait to go there. I hope to get there sometime. And I'd love to have a Felons Brewing shirt or mug or something.
Yeah.
And before we leave Queensland and Brisbane, we want to get parasailing reinstated for Brisbane 2032, at least as a demonstration event. And
Right.
Julia, I'm pleased to report that Alistair Murray, on here, of course, past president of the Australian Sailing, pinged me last night and said, yes, they are working assiduously. Is that a good Stanford word?
Perfect.
Working very hard to get parasailing back in as a demonstration event for the 2032 Olympics. He said the federation is, the clubs are. He said it's a full-on push. So
great.
But he says keep up the good.
Oh yeah.
Keep up the good thoughts and the good effort.
Right.
Pedro Foiling Sailor, we've got a nice segment coming. I'm going to run it on Tuesday's show. I just haven't had enough time to run it, and I want to give it proper time. And this is about follow-up with his 12-meter story when he was on here about Australia 1, but he's saying racing at the Royal Queensland soon in the South Pacific Laser Masters. So he's heading up there. So great club. And it looks like a good effort. So anybody, especially those of you in Australia, you know the drill. Speaking of Australians and cool people, we've got Alistair's AAAA for the day.
Oh, good.
And I've also got one more in the can, ready to go, about Ronstadt. And when we have some time, we'll run that as well. But in the meantime, here is Alistair's awesome Aussie anecdote for the day, starting with a slide. And he's going to refer to this in his video. He sent this graphic about the most popular sports among children in Australia. The source down in the right corner you see is Ausplay.
Mm-hmm.
And even in Australia, sailing is not in the top 30 youth sports, according to statistics that Alistair, and as you would know, he'd have this stuff.
Yep.
Swimming at the top. Okay, no surprise. Swimming, Australia, Olympics, Speedos, you get it. Soccer, of course, worldwide. Gymnastics, okay, that's good. Basketball, Australian football, dancing, recreational, probably no surprise in that. But you go down now through 30 sports.
Yep.
Do you see sailing mentioned anywhere?
No.
And indeed, it's not. And I think if you took that same study, that had the same facts and figures in other countries, we'd see similar.
When one says sport, yachting isn't the first thing I think of.
But sailing, you do.
Yes, that's well. I guess it's because I don't figure it as a competitive.
Well, it
thing.
is. That's because you're a cruiser, but it's obviously, and there's a big lifestyle sport from 8 to 80, as we all know. And I would have thought in a country like Australia that won the America's Cup 1983, ending the longest winning streak in sports.
Right.
I would have thought, who's Alley Cat Productions? Julie?
I know. I just saw that. I don't know.
Hi. Oh, that sounds interesting. We'll check out who that is. But here's Alistair's video. And remember the facts and figures here on this slide because he refers to them.
G'day, Tom, Julia, and all the Fozy. This is Alistair with AAAA for this week. Look, I really enjoyed the interview with Charlie Enright the other day, and congratulations for getting him on board. I think he's going to be terrific. I certainly hope so. And it set off a few thoughts, some of the things that were said, and I just thought you might find my response to a few of these things interesting to some degree. A goal of 100,000 members was mentioned for US sailing, and I think it was put up by their president. And it might seem like a very lofty goal from the existing level of 35,000 members, and that was mentioned, I think, by Tom or Charlie as being, a big stretch. But there's a couple of things I want to say about that number. Firstly, it's an absolutely tiny number. 100,000 people, when you think about it in a population the size of the USA or even in a population the size of Australia, it's a tiny number. Secondly, we have 125,000 members of Australian sailing let's call it a sailing mad country of 27 million people. We like to think of it as being sailing mad, and we present it that way at Sailing Illustrated. But sailing doesn't even register in our top 30 sports, which is quite horrendous. So, this number of 100,000 or 125,000, whether it's Australia we're talking about or whether it's the US, it's peanuts, and surely we can be ambitious and strive for big numbers and end up collectively going, way beyond that. So I've sent a chart through, to Tom, which I'm sure you'll show, but it shows a survey from Ausplay, which is a government department across Australia in 2023-24 of children's participation in sport. So admittedly, this is only children, but I'll make a couple of comments about adults later. And there it is. So swimming is the number one sport amongst Aussie kids, with 23% of children participating, and it's 1.2 million kids. Motorcycling is at 0.6%, at 30th. And all I can say is we must be, I don't know where we are, but we must be very close after that. Amongst adults, I know that fishing, is twice as popular as sailing, and fishing doesn't even make the top 30 sports for kids either. So we've got a problem getting kids onto the water, and we need to work on that. I also know that the only demographic, this is from previous surveys that I've been part of, the only demographic where sailing registers in any meaningful way at all is males 55 years plus. And we all know this anecdotally from the challenges that we know that the yacht clubs have in appealing to younger members and female members, and it also illustrates the degree of potential that there are in these markets that we're not tapping. But the only demographic is males 55 years plus. In this particular group in Australia, cycling is the top sport with 619,000 participants. Sailing is 10th. So we've made it into the top 10 with 72,000. So roughly, we've got 10 times more people going cycling than there are sailing. And thanks for profiling sailing in the last Sailing Illustrated, Tom. So I'm in both. They're my two sports that I'm passionate about. One's the most popular, and the other's the 10th most popular. But I happen to be a bit more in love with sailing than I am with cycling. Oh no, it'd actually be close. And I'd love to see sailing get up there. But anyway, I'm doing both in my advanced years. So just in closing, we need to spread the word. We're not in competition with anybody here. From country to country, a rising tide floats all boats. We need to get more people sailing around the world. We need to be talking to each other about participation programs and what's working in each other's countries and how we're going to help each other. So on that note, I'll just sign off and say, I'm going to reach out to Charlie, and I'm just going to say, look, if he wants to chat any time about what we've tried at Australian Sailing and what's working here and what isn't, I'm very, very happy to talk to him at any time. And let's get you up over 100,000, or let's get us over 200,000. Let's get you over 200,000. Let's all aim for the million. What do you think? Great challenge. Cheers, folks. That's me for today. Bye.
Yeah, nice. And Jody Shields is on saying cost. Yeah, okay, that's part of it. But, ice hockey is expensive too in this country, and a lot of kids do it, figure out how to do it. So there's a number of factors at play. There's the chart again. I don't think we need to refer back to it, but Rick Banner was saying a key question worth getting a follow-up reply in the Allsport survey that we're just showing here. Were the responses of the survey prompted or unprompted? Did the survey takers see 100 sports listed and tick off the boxes, or was this unprompted responses? Yeah, okay.
That would be wonderful to know.
That's a good point. But let's do this, Julio. How about if we start and we endeavor to have, in apropos Chip Merlin's segment, Alistair's segment just now, John in his segment, and I didn't orchestrate this, but saying we all have to work together. And the whole idea that, this sport, as my dad, back to my dad, likes to say, this sport is mentally and physically challenging. You have to have both mental agility, as he likes to say, and physical agility. But at the end of the day, as Bo Froelich and others have said, it's entertainment, it's fun. And I don't know why we don't say, hey, sailing is the most fun sport going, and it is affordable. You don't have to have a Merlin. You don't have to be in SailGP with helmets and flak jackets and, look like a RoboCop. You can go out on a sunfish. You can go out on a sailfish. Let's have a segment devoted in this show to having fun and building the sport at the grassroots level.
And volunteering to be a crew on somebody's boat.
And all the things like that. I think that Chicago Yacht Club initiative, we got to get somebody on from Chicago to tell us how they do that, because that sounds like a cool idea to me as well, Julia. Okay, thank you, Alistair Murray. Thank you very much. And I've also seen an email that Alistair has sent to Charlie.
Oh, good.
And, right, so they're already in touch. And Alistair explained a little bit about his background, so I think Charlie's going to use him as a resource as well.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, Ed Worley says we have people living in L.A. who have a large pool of people that do not even go to the beach swimming. Yeah, water is an issue too.
Yes, it is.
As I like to say, Clark Chapin is quoting me, it's not for everybody, but it is for anybody. And I like to say that as well. Thank you, Alistair Murray. You're an inspiration as well. Alistair's awesome Aussie anecdote for today, and I hope to get another one in on Tuesday. It's time constraints. And when something comes from Alistair or from Pedro Foiling Sailor or whomever else that sends stuff in, and we do appreciate it, if it's evergreen,
yes,
I tend to not be as, this one I thought today was really important because of Charlie and because of what we knew Chip was going to say. But sometimes I can put them off because they're so-called evergreen pieces. So do bear with me. In the America's Cup saga, 1851 to now, the compendium that Mark Holland has done has only identified 5,162 people who have been involved, including crew, owners, support staff, etc.
Wow.
Less than 6,000, just over 5,000 people. That's an interesting stat,
That
isn't it?
is.
That, Mr. Holland, is, and he was a great guest, too.
Oh, yes. Oh, he's wonderful because he knows everything.
We've had a string, Julia.
Yep.
We've had a string of great guests,
We
haven't we? Okay. The America's Cup. Speaking of the America's Cup, Julia.
Yeah.
You were going to say.
John Albert Collins says he's flying to Sydney tomorrow to get together of about 100 ex and current laser sailors.
Great. Great. Flying to Sydney. Well, John Albert. Okay, great stuff. AC-38. Not much to report here. It's quiet. I am hearing from people regularly about behind-the-scenes stuff, but there's a lot of negotiation going on. But I will say one thing that's interesting, and it was commended to me earlier this morning by one of our FOSI, that on the 30th of last month, Stefan Candler, who, as you know, is the co-head or the leading light of the French syndicate, did a podcast with the Tip and Shaft podcast, Into the Wind. And it's in French, but I commend it to you. I've had it characterized to me, not necessarily by the gentleman by Christoph Runda who sent me this, but I've had somebody else who listened to it and gave me, because I don't speak French. You do, Julia.
I'll listen to it.
You listen to it and see. But the impression is interesting. But thank you, Christoph, for sending that along. And from my other source, Stefan basically explains that he is confident the dispute between all the parties in the current America's Cup AC-38 will be resolved soon. Maybe it is only his hopes, or maybe he fears that the same scenario as 2010 happens, because in 2010, he had a private investor, he says on the podcast, to fund his campaign, but lost everything when the court battle ensued. 2010 deed of gift. Between the lines, he also says all challengers were informed about Naples. Well, I think they knew that was the most likely outcome, but they don't know, and what's irking them is they don't know the financial deal. They don't know the who gets what, the what do what get proposition, and they feel like they're being cut out of that.
Right.
He says that is the host city deal. He says the dispute is the usual game to influence the protocol. Well, there's some of that, I'm sure. No doubt. But it's because of what we're about to say here. After Barcelona, he says challengers concluded that ETNZ had way too much power and control, allowing New Zealand to win too easily. Big team spent so much money to try to win it and lost so badly that they do not want to do it again at this expense and with so little control, so little involvement, and that's out of which has grown this America's Cup partnership discussion.
I think that's absolutely right.
I think it is too. So that discussion continues, and one hears another protocol, as we told you on Tuesday's show, but there's another protocol that's circulating. They've taken the earlier draft, and I know who promulgated this latest draft, and I won't say who because I've been asked not to. There is another draft. Everybody's in intense discussions and negotiations, but from everything I'm hearing, they're not really very close on all of this. And at least Team New Zealand is lawyering up. I don't know about others, but I know that this little tidbit, Luis Sainz Marsical, who I know well, from Valencia, Madrid. He was a legal advisor he's been a legal advisor to teams for a long time. He has jumped ship yet again. He was with Luna Rossa There he is, second from the left. And then he lately has been with American Magic, and now he's jumped to, ta-da, Emirates Team New Zealand.
Oh.
Joining Russell Green on the legal team. What do you think of that, Julia?
I think he got more money.
Well, I don't know if he got more money or he got the assurance that there is money because, you know, he's probably pretty sure, as most people are, that Team New Zealand will be in the next cup. But who knows about the other teams? Who knows about the other teams, Julia?
Nobody.
A lot of good comments flowing in about our topic of having more fun in the sport and getting more people. We'll continue to do that. But in the meantime, this protocol draft, which I've not seen, but I've had it characterized, and one of the things I've heard said is that there is no Youth America's Cup planned, and it's not in the protocol because
no money.
No, it's because I think they're putting a kid on the boat. They're requiring each of the teams to have that one of the 6 sailors to be somebody under 25. I still think, however, a lot of people are appalled by the fact that these are battery-operated boats.
Oh,
and just a step away from being radio-controlled boats.
Yes.
The only human power, the input, is the person steering, the nut behind the wheel, as they say. And that's offending a lot of people. But there is a new draft protocol. It's being circulated. There's a big discussion going on about that protocol, but they're no closer to some kind of an agreement. And I'll tell you one other thing I've heard, and that is that the Kiwis have sent a letter, and I don't know if it's the Squadron or Team New Zealand or both. It's the Team New Zealand, at their Squadron, probably at the behest of Team New Zealand, have sent a letter to Sir Ben saying, you need to put up or shut up. You need to get your challenge in. You need to get, you need to sign the protocol. We need to get agreement. We need to have a notification of the name of your boat under the deed of gift. And if you're not going to do that, it's time to move on. So they're putting pressure, the Kiwis are, on, because the Kiwis are obviously worried about whether the Royal Yacht Squadron will perform as Challenger of Record. And if not, who, Julia, is going to be the Challenger of Record? I understand it's not going to be the French. I understand from the person who characterized this interview, Stefan Candler, he's saying, no, it won't be me, it'll be the Italians. But we know that the Italians, there's bad blood between the Italians and Team New Zealand from the Cup 2 times ago, from the Cup down in New Zealand, when Prada was the sponsor and the Italians were the Challenger of Record. So this is fraught.
Does it not go automatically to the
we're talking about Challenger of Record, not the Defender.
Oh, Defender.
There's nothing automatic. And in fact, the protocol that was leaked to me had Team New Zealand choosing a successor Challenger of Record if the current one pulls out. Bad blood makes the best challenge, Mark Holland says. Okay.
Probably so.
Well, regardless, this trustee, a lot of these problems is because this trustee is basically powerless. They have delegated all of their authority, contrary to New York law. They've delegated their authority, duties, responsibilities to the team. And they are, in my estimation, and I continue to say on this show, the worst trustee in America's Cup history. Sad to say.
Rob Fry reminds me, however.
Well, I think I saw Rob's comment, and I wasn't going to read it, but go ahead.
Yeah. Do you think the Defender has too much control? That's rich when you think back to New York Yacht Club pre-'83.
Yeah, but Rob, I'm sorry. I was involved in '83. You weren't. I don't think, Rob. And, of course, Rob is the father of the Esteem, and Rob's a hell of a good sailor. He was involved in the Cup. I think he sailed with the Kiwis in the '87, if I remember right, Rob. But hang on, Rob, and he's Leo Takahashi's dad.
Right.
Remember this, everybody. New York, as I've said on this show, at the end, they used to publish from '58 on, at the end of the match, before the match was over, before they'd won or lost, they published a thing called the memorandum. And New York would publish that memorandum, and they saying, if we win, it's our intention to host the next Cup under these rules, the 12-meter class rule, for example, the ITMA, the International 12-Meter Association class rule, and we intend to do it here in Newport in 3 years' time. And you left Newport, Rhode Island in September after the match, and you knew right then and there where it was going to be, when it was going to be, and in what class of boat it was going to be.
Right.
Now, they negotiated tough, but, come on, New York gradually relaxed the rules. New York allowed multiple challenges. They didn't have to do that. In 1970, they allowed multiple challengers, and that is what led to their demise, I assert, in 1983. 13 years later, multiple challengers. They had 6 teams on the other side of the power equation and only 3 defenders. Okay, we'll talk some more about that, but let's talk about the 52 Super Series in the meantime. Just a quick catch-up, as we're now 2 hours and 5 minutes into the show, Julia.
Uh-oh.
Well, I told you we had a lot on today. And there's a lot. It's summertime here in the Northern Hemisphere. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. The 52 Super Series, we haven't even talked about SailGP yet. But they're in their second of 5 series, the Galicia 52 Super Series Royale Cup, as we told you on Tuesday. There were the standings going into racing today. They got another couple races in. And the leaderboard now is got American Magic on top still, not now, but continuing. Provezza had a good day today. There is Provezza and American Magic, and Provezza has climbed up now to 4th place. But this is the news of the regatta. You see who's on the helm there with the tiller extension in his hands. For the first time, H4, Harry Malgus IV, is sailing for American Magic Quantum Racing. There's Tom Pace saying, H4, Harry IV on the tiller. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Cool stuff in Bravo Zulu. And look at the results. They've had a 2-2-4-1-1-4-7-3. Not so good today. It was light and shifterly today. So some of the other teams came to the fore. But this Alquito Vitamina from Italy, that's the Italian flag, they're doing well. Platoon, the perennial good top team, is doing well as well, but even they had an 8 and a 4 today. But Harry IV, H4, is doing brilliantly, and that's the leaderboard at the end of today's racing. Tomorrow is the final day, day 5, and you can watch it live if you want on their television, which starts, Julia, I'm sure you'll get up. You'll probably be awake.
I will. I unfortunately wake up at 4, so.
Well, you got to wake up 15 minutes earlier to watch it at 03:45. Pacific, which is 06:45 Eastern, 10:45 UTC, if you want to watch it live on YouTube. And it's a nice telecast. Mark Holland says, I'm so enjoying Harry and this whole regatta. Great sailing. Ed Worley agreeing with me, saying New York Yacht Club kept changing the rules to make it easier to challenge and let the challengers run their own affairs without making them pay millions to the defender. Good point, Ed.
Yes, indeed.
And that really, good point, Ed, because that is at, Julia, that's at the heart of this big controversy.
Yes, it's $5 million to join the race.
Fund.
Yeah.
It's not only that, but then all the money coming from the venue fee, from the sponsors, from the television, is all going into Mr. Dalton's pot.
Mm-hmm.
And how much of it's going to go back to the challengers? Last time, none went back to the pot, back to the challengers from that pot. And that's what they all want to know. That's what Alinghi says. We want to know that because, again, I'll say it one last time, because to Ernesto Bertorelli's everlasting credit, when he ran the 2007 defense in Valencia, and I was negotiating on behalf of the Challenger of Record, Golden Gate Yacht Club, and Hamish Ross was working for Alinghi, and we negotiated a deal, and we had a payout to the challengers based on how you finished in the Challenger Selection Series, the Louis Vuitton Cup. If you got into the match, as Team New Zealand did, you got half the pot. And the defender, Alinghi, got the other half of the proceeds, the revenue over expense, the excess. And if you were down in the finals of the Louis Vuitton Cup, you got some less than that, but you got some. Even if you were plus 39 or Shoshaloza down at the bottom of the heap, you got a chunk of money, like $1 million. I talked to Luca Devoti. He ran plus 39 in 2007, and he remembers. So, there's real money involved here, and there needs to be a more equitable split among all the teams.
Yes.
There's also, I will tell you, Julia, there's a big fight going on. There's a big fight over who's going to run this so-called America's Cup partnership. Alinghi wants their man in there, a guy called Michel Okay, I'm telling you stuff that I've confirmed behind the scenes here. A guy called Michel Hodara, who was the COO, a Swiss guy. He was the COO of 2007 and then was the CEO of 2010, the America's Cup. And that's who the challengers, that means Ernesto wants, whereas Mr. Dalton wants to go back and run the team and put Kevin Shoebridge, his second in charge, his 2IC, as the Kiwis would say. Mm-hmm. They want Kevin Shoebridge in to run America's Cup partnership, the event authority.
Yeah.
And that's because Mr. Dalton wants to have his thumb on all of that.
But who's going to make that decision?
Well, the problem is they can't agree. So, and that's why that whole ACP, that America's Cup partnership, is fraught. As Ed Worley said a minute ago in the comments, they should simply let the challengers go off, run their challenger selection series, let them sign up a sponsor, let them, if they want to have joint television, you can do a deal on that. It's not hard. Throw all the television together. Here's the stuff. Here's the expense. Here's the revenue. Mm-hmm. Not hard, because it's been done many times before. We know how to do that. Everybody knows how to do that.
Yeah.
That's the latest on the Cup. Let's now get to the other big professional enchilada in our sport, which is SailGP, coming up in New York this weekend, tomorrow and Sunday. Weather not looking so good. We thought it was looking better on Tuesday, but it's going to be rainy and light tomorrow. We'll show you the weather forecast.
Oh, yeah.
Governor's Island, and even Russell admits at the confluence there of the East River and the Hudson River, the sailing is going to be interesting. And I'll show you his comments in the Russell report that was issued this morning. I like his Russell report. They've been very interesting and I think quite honest. Coming up, the Mubadala. Say it again, Mubadala. SailGP New York City tomorrow and Sunday. There's Russell and his New York Russell report on the fleet race, on the fleet-wide wing repairs and the top picks for the New York podium. Well, there is the look of the practice sailing that has gone on. And Russell says SailGP has returned, this is from their press statement, has returned to New York for the third time ahead of this weekend's Mubadala New York Sail Grand Prix on the 7th and 8th. And Russell gave his report behind the scenes in sight of the fleet. And he says, we're back in New York for the third and final U.S. event of the season, following our doubleheader in L.A. and San Francisco in March. We've come to New York following the cancellation of Rio, scheduled for May after the unfortunate wing collapse of the Australian team in San Francisco. They ran this picture again, which I grabbed. We've run it on the show, but that is the Southampton facility, I believe. That's the Southampton facility in the UK where now SailGP's technical bases center is located. Russell says, after doing, I know a lot of you are engineers, and I thought you'd find this interesting. After doing some analysis, the team identified that we had a problem with the bonding in some of the shear webs. We set out to fix that by making them stronger, as you would. This was a significant refit job that meant the ship transporting the fleet of F-50s and wings, which was in the Southern Caribbean, which we've showed you thanks to Stingray, that whole ship, the progress of that ship, was diverted to the American Magic facility in Pensacola, in Florida, just east of the St. Andrews Bay Yacht Club, where we started, west of the St. Andrews Bay Yacht Club, right? Where we started those repairs by cutting out the shear webs of all the bottom elements of the wings. That also meant taking off all the wing frames, producing new shear webs simultaneously at the SailGP Tech facility in Southampton, then flying them to Pensacola and New York for the refits.
Oh, my.
As part of the refit, we've changed the core material in the shear web to an aluminum core and added laminate, which has made the wing sails about 2 kilograms heavier, but significantly stronger in torsion.
Please tell me what shear webs.
The shear webs are the reinforcement kind of corners of where the big ribs are. The shear webs.
Okay.
And I'm not an engineer, but Russell is, and I don't, knowing him, having been to battle with him, not against him, but with him and against him, but in the Cup, I know how attentive to detail he is and how smart he is. And as an engineer, he's got a good engineering mind on all that. Now, the other big piece of news was this. And what do you see there, Julia? Do you see the blue things up there on the wing sail?
Mm-hmm.
You know what that is? Those are boxer briefs. Those are boxers. That's underwear because this...
It is?
Yes. This company, Bonds, is Australia's famously popular and good underwear, undies, skivvies company, owned by Hanes, by the way, which is another issue, who also own Playtex and God knows who else in this country. And Russell says the other big news is the team ownership announcement of Australia with the title partner Bonds, and the team will now be referred to as the Bonds Flying Roos.
Okay. Yeah.
Nothing comes between me and my Calvins.
Yeah, right.
Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman are co-owners of the team now, and alongside driver Tom Slingsby, who has become a part owner. The involvement of Ryan Reynolds is very exciting from a marketing perspective. We've all seen what he's done with other sports teams, including Wrexham, AFC, and we're really excited to have them both involved, and I'm sure we're going to see big things from the team in the future.
Oh, good.
Big things, Julia. Are you ready for something big?
Oh, boy,
There you go. This is big. I'm talking about the snake, not the bulge. Do you know who that is?
Oh, yes, I should. I recognize the face.
That is Robert Clarence Irwin, who's an Australian conservationist, television presenter, zookeeper, wildlife photographer, and actor. He is the son, remember Steve Irwin?
No.
Crocodile Dundee, Steve Irwin, and is often noted by, not the actor, but noted by he was, Crocodile Dundee was kind of, what's the word I want? What's the word? It was after him. It was, what's the word I want? Julia, help me. Crocodile Dundee was in the chat. Somebody will come up with it. It was based on him. Or, frame. Well, what's the word? I can't, I'm too old. So, often noted by fans to share similarities with his late father. Julia, you're going to see a lot of these photos.
Yes.
Well, what a big snake you have, Clark Chapin is saying. Can't afford pants. There he is again.
And a tarantula on your shoulder.
And this was an announcement in April. Bonds, the Aussie underwear made for Down Under, makes its U.S. debut. So the legendary Australian brand hits the U.S. market. Well, obviously, they looked around and said, we ought to be involved in SailGP as a way to further enhance, further support our foray into the U.S. market.
Clark Chapin said Steve Irwin had nothing to do with the crocodile.
I know, but model is the word I was looking for. They modeled Crocodile Dundee on Steve Irwin in part. I know, I'm quite sure. And go look at that. And you Aussies tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
Okay.
Down underwear, Rick Banner is saying. That's good.
Yes,
now, Julia, here's some more of this guy in his Bonds.
Oh.
Now, do you think we're about to see Tom Slingsby? Is he about to replace Robert Irwin, Tom Slingsby, in all these ads? If so, that's what they'll look like.
Oh. Oh.
I worked on that this morning. That was hard, Julia.
I'm sure it was.
Huh?
Yeah.
If you're going to Photoshop, if you're going to screen grab anything out of this show, there you go. Does Tom Slingsby have to start wearing underpants? Dogzilla Monster says. Well, Julia, what do you think of that?
I think you ought to send it to Slingsby.
I no doubt will. I'll put it on my Facebook page as my cover photo. Because Magnus the Magnificent this morning, he read a long piece called something, The Pants. I think it was the headline of his. I didn't put it in here.
Yeah.
But he's saying the team has already agreed to do a photo shoot in their underwear, in their Bonds.
Wow.
So, Julia, you got something to look forward to there. There you go.
It's not necessarily my idea of a good time.
Jody is saying, Tom needs a bigger crock to match Robert Irwin. Jody also had a pithy comment I saw on the Facebook page when this was announced on the Australian team's Facebook page. He said, this is going to bond the whole team together.
Oh, yes.
And no doubt they'll be better supported. Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you remember this ad, Julia?
No.
This is what made Gary Jobson famous. It wasn't sailing, but sailing got him involved. Somebody, Ted Turner, somebody convinced Doers to run this ad in 1985 of Gary in a bathtub with a sailboat floating there on top. And there were a series of ads of famous or semi-famous sports person. Gary Jobson, Annapolis, Maryland, age 34. That's how long ago this was. Gary's older than I by a year or two. Occupation, yacht racing tactician, author, lecturer, editor-at-large of the Yacht magazine, which I think is long gone. Trying to stay home for more than a week at a time is his hobby. And, of course, what is his scotch? The Doers White Label. And there was Gary in the bathtub, the famous ad that, as much as anything, made Gary famous above and beyond our beloved sport. So there is the team. And Russell, now back to Russell's report. Despite the Australians' wing collapse in San Francisco, the team is still leading the 2025 season leaderboard, and there's no question in my mind, Russell's mind, that Tom Slingsby has to be the highest-ranked driver in SailGP. Jason Waterhouse is also incredibly important as the team's flight controller, and I think they've built on the different thinking that wing trimmer Chris Draper, who we remember now is with ETNZ, has brought to the team following the departure of Kyle Langford to Red Bull Italy at the start of the season. Looking at the data, it's obvious that the Australians are very fast upwind, and that's coming down to sailing technique, Russell asserts. They've been extremely guarded and selective about what they're doing, and I suspect that's because they want to conceal their advantage with the season grand final in mind. When they need to make a gain upwind, they seem to have the wheels to move through the fleet.
Well, that's good.
Now, I'm going to play maybe not all 5.5 minutes of this, but I have an excerpt from the press conference, yesterday morning's press conference, I think it was, and the lady whom I don't know, who's formerly with CNN, and I'm not sure who else, is the new person, the local person in charge of the press and the press conferences, interviewing Tom Slingsby and another senior person with Russell's staff, the COO, the managing
the biggest news of
director.
the morning, the acquisition of the Australia SailGP team by Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds. Let's get Andy Thompson up here. He is the SailGP managing director and also the CEO driver and today co-owner of the newly branded Bonds Flying Ruse, Tom Slingsby as well. It's so nice to be with you both. Massive congratulations, Tom. I'll start with you. Just tell us about this acquisition and what it means.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to think that 5 years ago when we started this journey, and you could never really believe that, yeah, here we are 5 years later, and our owners are Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds. We're now partnered with an unbelievable Australian brand, an iconic Australian brand, Bonds, and it's just such an exciting new chapter we're starting.
It really seems, Andy, like this is a transformational time for SailGP. What insight can you offer to how this all came about?
Yeah, I agree. This is going to be transformational for Tom's team and the league more broadly. Look, we've been in the market kind of on the sale of our teams for some time, and a group came together around Ryan and Hugh. And we've been talking for some months, and finally we were able to bring it together just before this event. I think Hugh is a true blue Aussie, as they say, and really loves his sailing. Ryan's had a pretty significant impact on other sports teams in recent times, and obviously Tom is great at what he does. So we're really excited to see kind of what new energy that this group can bring, and I think it's going to be fantastic for the whole league.
And I've now caught my breath after my opening remarks, but it seems like your team is getting set to maybe take some breaths away because you've bonded now with this iconic partner, Bonds, the famous Aussie underwear company. And from what we understand, there's a special photo shoot coming out soon. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I think it could have already been released, actually. Yeah, that's my first underwear photo shoot. It was not easy, but no, look, I think the energy that they're bringing, they're a cheeky, fun brand. If anyone's seen their advertisements previously with Robert Irwin, Steve Irwin's son, they're out of the box. They think outside the box. They want to have fun with their advertising. And they said, look, these are some ideas. Are you guys in? And we said, look, we want to partner and we want to have fun with you guys. So let's do it. And So yeah, we're all donning the bonds for a photo shoot, and yeah, I think everyone can see that pretty soon.
What was the response from the rest of the team? Everybody game?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're all nervous. It's not something we do. We're sailors. We don't do undie photo shoots. But it was fun. We all had a laugh, and yeah, I'm not sure how many more of them in the future we've got, but who knows? Could be a lot.
Well, congratulations on such a wonderful day and the trajectory of SailGP just growing and growing. On a
Okay,
much more serious
it becomes a bit of a commercial message after this, but you get the idea. And that interview, the whole press conference went on for about, Julia, it went on for, I don't know.
The team's doing really
45 minutes.
Yeah, 45 minutes or so. Well said. And the thing that was surprising to me about Russell's report, all the pre-publicity, I went on the website to see what, they do little news clips, news segments.
Mm-hmm.
And they're talking about the Aussies and Bonds. They're talking about the Italians. They're talking about the new team management of the Italians and Jimmy Spithill's team and so on, as you would. There was precious little about the team that's there front and center right now in that video. There was precious little, if any, mention of the American team. And you would have thought that here in New York, the home team being the American team, you would have had some mention. There must be some angst somewhere among some people. One never knows, Julia, but I'm good at really reading tea leaves, as you know.
Yeah.
Or at least I like to think I am. But there's something that is not correct. We'll see how it goes this weekend. I wonder if that team, the American team, is about to change hands.
Did I read that someplace?
No, not that I know of. I haven't seen it, but we'll see. I don't know if any of the Fozy in the chat have an idea, but I don't want to belabor this. I don't want to run that whole, I wasn't going to run the whole press conference, but I was going to run just an excerpt. Team USA, who? Ed Worley is saying, yeah, indeed. Okay, so there they are outside of the Statue of Liberty at the foot of Governor's Island, which is where the where the fan base is. And Russell went on to say in his report, when we look at the conditions and forecasts of this weekend, I think it's going to be very challenging. I don't think many of the teams are that familiar with the conditions here. The current, as we've been telling you now for weeks, months, the current is going to be significant. It'll be coming out of the East River and the Hudson at different flow rates. Then you throw in the influence of Governor's Island as well, and we can expect unstable conditions. There is the understatement, Julia.
Yes.
Of the year in SailGP. Teams, go ahead.
Is this the same route that they took before?
No, the venue before was up against Manhattan Yacht Club and up on the west side.
Oh, yeah.
On the west side in the Hudson River. Back up. So here's some more. Teams are going to have to be very good at reading the current on the water, and I think those teams and athletes with experience in those conditions like Giles Scott, Dylan Fletcher, Chris Draper, and Hannah Mills may have an advantage here. Well, we'll see. The French will have a good go, too, I'm pretty sure. Well, that was Russell, and I think Russell's probably right, but wait, there's more. Because the weather forecast, which we thought was bad, then it looked better on Tuesday, it now for Saturday is dismal or worse. Do you see from 2 to 5 here?
Yeah.
1 gusting 2 miles per hour and 6 gusting 8 at 5 p.m.
Oh.
Not good. Cloudy, sun breaking out later in the afternoon. There's a couple of the forecasts are even less, shall we say, are even more pessimistic than that. Now, Sunday, it looks better. On Sunday, it's looking 12, gusting a little bit, steady 12. And it looks like maybe you've got, it's a strange southeasterly direction on Sunday, which is also not helpful. But sunnier it looks like, if you believe that forecast. And thanks very much to Rick Bannerell for sending that along. He did the research.
Oh, thank you, Rick. Yeah.
On that. Again, he did the slide for us on Tuesday as well. There's the leaderboard. As you know, Tommy Slingsby and the Aussies are on top, just barely ahead of Emirates, GBR, Dylan Fletcher, and co. And then Julia, your favorite team,
I know,
in third on 36 points, a couple points back of Emirates, and 3 points back behind the Australians, and the U.S. on 2 points down there at the very bottom, barely ahead of the Germans. who are on -1 because of penalties from earlier in the season. Ed Worley is saying the weather is usually not like this. Well, as I've been telling anybody, all of you on here, I've sailed in that area only once because after we did it and won the regatta, so it's not sour grapes, on a New York 40, New York Yacht Club fall regatta. We swore we'd never go back and race there again, even if New York Yacht Club held a regatta. This is years ago.
Yeah.
And New York Yacht Club has not because it's a terrible place to sail.
Yeah.
But there's money. Follow the money.
Right.
That's why these venues get chosen, no doubt. Now, as to the TV, contrary to what you see here on the slide, see it says they're going live at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. The preview that they put up on YouTube, I believe, is wrong. They're really going live at 12:30 our time, not 10, which is 15:30 EDT and 19:30 UTC tomorrow, Saturday. And that is the same time that they're scheduled to go live on day 2 on Sunday, 12:30, 15:30, 19:30. So don't be confused by whatever got put up on YouTube and by whoever their social media person is that did the previews. And I understand. Every now and then I make a screw up too when I put up our slides for this show on YouTube and Facebook, the preview slides. As Clark says, at least the Team USA has a positive score. It could be worse. Now Dogzilla Monster is saying it did get changed. Okay, so here's the deal. Thank you, Stingray. If that's the case, what he's saying, Julia, is that because of that horrible, let's go back and look at the weather forecast now. I back the slides up. He's saying that because of this weather forecast, it did get changed to 10 a.m. our time, which is 1 p.m. Eastern time. And if it's 1 p.m. Eastern time, doesn't look much better, Stingray. They're hoping, I guess, it'll be better. But he says now it is, they did push it back. They pushed the first start up to Saturday at 1 p.m., which is indeed 10 a.m. our time. Josh Tozo confirming that as well. Okay. So I was told wrong by some croutons that said, no, it's the same time. It's the same time both days. Well, they have apparently pushed it up, and I apologize to their social media person who got the timing right on the YouTube slide, the promo slide, the preview slide. Julia, you see Jody Shields is saying he thinks, let's face it, the USA team should be the flagship team of SailGP. They've been horrible on the water. If you go back and watch the episode of Racing on the Edge where they first announced the ownership, it just, the results were not the priority. Russell pulled him up and said it's hard to get people to watch if you don't have good results. So
that's right. He's
right. So it is at earlier tomorrow, 10 a.m. our time, which would be 1 p.m. Eastern time, which would be 1700 UTC. And then we believe Sunday they're back to 12:30, 15:30, and 19:30. Thank you, Josh Tozo. Thank you.
Eastern time.
Well, 12:30 Pacific.
Oh, 12:30 Pacific.
15:30 Eastern and 19:30 UTC. Mark Holland is saying yes, but the USA, because of their sponsor, has the cleanest swimming pool.
Oh, my. Oh, my.
Apparently there are storms forecast as well. Jody Shields is saying that's why they pushed it up earlier tomorrow. Okay, that gets us to the last leg. Julia's going to be one of our longer shows.
Yes,
they're going to be shorter than 3 hours. But the last leg, we're in the D block now. And we've been, I just have a short video from this regatta going on, the European Championships for the NACRAs, the 49er, and the FXs, where they got a big turnout. Really nice event going on, and they are doing good television, live television, and they're doing good video summaries. And here's the one from today.
It was a long day today, very hot. We got out on time but had lots of waiting out there on the water. We had a lot of attempted starts and even abandoned race. We got 3 races done.
We had 3 top threes, which we were really happy with. All about getting off the start line and keeping yourselves clear and the ability to go. Just trying to keep ourselves clear and consistent and get around the track fast.
Okay, nice video. A little light, but this is their first big regatta for those 3 classes in this quadrennium. They're Europeans and their worlds are coming up, but nice event. Great. Thank you very much for that video. And also happening, they go 2 more days. I think they wrap on Sunday. Dogzilla says that Naples wants a SailGP event. Well, no doubt. We'll see. But you see this boat, Julia?
Yes.
Do you see in the upper right corner, it says the Island Sailing Club?
Yes.
That is because tomorrow is the famously cool Round the Island race, sponsored by the Island Sailing Club in the UK. And that means around the Isle of Wight.
Ah.
And one of our Fozy has gotten a ride on Zulu on this boat. My ride for the Round the Island race tomorrow, Saturday, the Foiling Mod 70 Zulu, chartered by Peter Cunningham, helmed by Ned Collier Wakefield, and an all-star crew, going for the record of sub 2 hours, and I'll be on board.
Good for him.
MTM,
well,
a.k.a. Magnus the Magnificent. He'll be on that boat tomorrow, and we're wishing them well. Let's see if they can set the record for the Around the Island race. Remember last year it was so breezy. They had boats broken up, and it was
more than
scary.
breezy. It was.
Yeah, Mark Holland, I saw that Tip and I'm not going to run it, but Tip and Shaft ran today the scary report about a yacht that got cut in half by a commercial ship who claimed the yacht didn't have the right of way. I mean, it's a very serious thing. And Atkins, though, Commodore Atkins saying Mod 70s are serious fun. I couldn't agree more. So we'll see how Magnus does. We hope we get a report from him. And Julia, in the meantime,
yes,
a couple of funnies, and then we'll call it a show.
Okay.
This came in dedicated to you. Since we talked so much, as Alistair said it in his segment, we talked so much about cycling in our last show. Yet another cycling skill that has been lost over the years. The woman practicing cutting off a head while riding a bicycle. Now, who would send in a joke like that?
Oh, yes.
Who would you think?
Godzilla.
You know, it says Rick Bannerow, but it wasn't Rick Bannerow. It was Gordon Smith. I mislabeled that. Yeah, and Gordon, I apologize. Gordon Smith sent that in, not Rick Bannerow. Now, Rick Bannerow did send this in, so the graphics department mucked that up, Gordon. I apologize. I thought that was funny, though. Huh? Riding around on a bicycle to cut somebody's... What's the difference, Julia, between Dubai, since we keep talking about these countries, between Dubai and Abu Dhabi? The people in Dubai don't like the Flintstones, but people in Abu Dhabi do. Do you get it?
No.
Abu Dhabi. The people in Abu Dhabi do.
Abu Dhabi do. Okay.
That was sent in by Bannerow, and this is why. Don't you remember that?
Yep.
Fred always said everything was yabba dabba doo. We may have to adopt that on this show. Yabba dabba doo.
I have
the opposite of Kurtonic.
I have great respect because one of my early offshore clients were 2 companies in Abu Dhabi.
Did you say yabba dabba doo to them?
No, but only because I didn't think of it.
Didn't think of yabba dabba doo. Okay, that gets us to the finish line, Julia. And you like to say,
please, this is especially a good time to like, follow, and share. And read the comments.
Yeah, the comments are welcome, even in replay. We leave them open, as I said during Chip Merlin's fine segment. That was a great segment today, wasn't it? With Chip.
You know why he's a good attorney, too.
Yeah, you can see he's articulate, bright, and diplomatic.
Indeed.
Diplomatic. And yeah, comments are welcome. And we appreciate all of you who contribute via patreon.com/join/Sailing Illustrated so we can have a nice studio. Julia, knock on that door about the graphics department. They had 3 screw-ups today.
Oh, God.
There's nobody back there except storage of technical gear here in our Studio B. Chip asked me, do you have a Studio A? And I said, yes, we do. We used to broadcast from Studio A. And we have a Studio C, too.
Yes.
Pierre DeYoung, thank you. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to those who gave us audio, video, and images for today's shoe. Really big shoe.
Really big shoe.
Julia, final thoughts?
Oh, I'm tired today.
And you're going to remind me who's on the show on Tuesday?
Yes.
Luca
Devoti
will be our guest on the show. I don't have a picture of him in here, but this is going to be a fun show, and he's going to spill the beans on a lot of stuff, including and especially the Italian America's Cup venue.
Really?
Supposed venue. Yeah, he's got a lot of cool information. A long talk with him the other day.
Oh, good.
Thanks, everybody. You got to give the graphics department a living wage. We got to give them a raise back there, Julia, behind those doors.
Yep.
Tell them they're getting a raise.
Yeah. Better watch it. You're getting a raise.
Getting a raise. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend wherever in the world you are, especially down under where it's already started. Those of you going to New York for SailGP, have fun. No, we're not going to do a watch party, but we'll be watching it, and maybe we'll all be commenting, chatting among ourselves, especially if there's no racing in the late air, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, guys. See you on Tuesday. In the meantime, sail fast, sail safe, and have fun. Ciao for now.